Oh, forgot. Did I put it on? Come on. Really? Oh, sorry, folks. Music's not going. All right, we're gonna fix that. Going to fix that. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's always something, I tell you. It's always something when we're getting set up. Nothing ever goes exactly the way you want it to, right? No, it doesn't. Give me a couple moments. We're almost there. Because nothing ever goes exactly right. Just about ready. Just about there. I know the music's not playing. It should be, but it's not. Bear with me. There, it should be playing now. Give me a second. Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Actually, Dragon, the political dragon, and our Bronx offices, our temporary offices. I'm happy to be here with you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, hello, thank you, and we welcome you to be part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary. We talk about all the issues that aren't approved by the mainstream media that the White House would like to shut down. That's why they are colluding with the mainstream media to silence your voice, to keep you quiet and stick to the approved messaging. We disagree with that. We want to hear your voice. We believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to be able to speak up and talk about the issues that matter to you. And that's what we do every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to talk a bit about what's happening with the 2024 election. We're going to talk about Bill Maher. We're going to talk about Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. Of course, we're going to talk about Israel, Hamas, and its implications around the rest of the world, especially in the United States, and how we are seeing anti-Semitism prosper in a level that we have never seen before. And it's really quite terrifying because we are seeing free speech die step by step, just in time for the 2024 election, just in time for the social media, the White House to collude together and once again fortify the 2024 election, just as they did in 2020. We have not forgotten that. Nor have we forgotten the Americans who have been abandoned in Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, and now in both Israel and in Gaza, as many people may not be aware. Over 400 Americans abandoned in Gaza, just like they were in Israel and everywhere else around the world. It's really terrifying, folks. This is crazy. So we're going to be talking a little bit about all of these issues in just a moment. Give me a second. I just want to make sure that this is going out properly to everyone to let them know that the channel is up, because the computer, there's always a problem. I tell you, the system never works exactly the way that we want it to. So bear with me, and then I'll focus on this. You, of course, can always reach out to us in text and in chat. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. When we get the money, we are able to be on other platforms as well. At the moment, we can only afford to be on YouTube and Facebook simulcast. Please do try and reach out to us. We're happy to hear your voice. So that should be up everywhere now. And if our second screen comes up, we'll be able to share everything. Otherwise, all the links to everything we'll be talking about today will be coming up afterwards. At the end of the show, you'll have all the links for everything that we're going to speak about today. I hope everyone is going to be well. It's a rainy day. It's just, it's a tough day. But then again, it's been a tough couple of weeks, hasn't it? Now, normally on our program, we like to start off with talking about the issues about what's happening internationally to therefore speak about what's happening here in the United States. They are interrelated. What affects the United States from around the world affects the world from the United States. It's one affects the other. They're interconnected. And I know a lot of people are going to watch this after their football game or the housewives of wherever, the MILF Manors, the Ahsokas. They're going to watch whatever else, and then they may come to this. But this is going to be important because unlike all the distractions of entertainment, which nowadays have a huge portion of political propaganda injected into them, the fact is that they're not going to change your life. This will. What we're talking about are the things that are affecting you every day, everywhere around the world. And so we find that to be very important. And we want to hear your voices. Please remember, we're not progressives here. So you don't have to agree. If you disagree, we're happy to hear your voice and to hear why you disagree with some of the conclusions that we will come to based on the facts as they exist. Now, as many people may be aware, right this second, we know that in Gaza, in Israel, the Israel-Hamas conflict that is going on right now, we're going to start with that. Well, actually, before we get to Israel-Hamas, we got to remember, there's still the Ukraine-Russia conflict that is continuing to go on. That hasn't stopped. There is still China and Taiwan and the militarization of Southeast Asia. We are seeing, as we have said before, we are moving basically from the logistics phase of 3 simultaneous regional wars to open conflict. We've been mentioning this for 2 years to our audience to prepare. It's not World War III. We keep hearing this. Oh, the Middle East, it's going to be through World War III. The United States is starting to attack Syria. Iran is starting to attack the United States in Iraq, in Syria, around the world. There are threats coming from Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, not just against Israel, but the United States as well. And everyone's saying, oh my God, this is going to be World War III. No, it is not. That is fear-mongering. The people who are telling you that it's going to be World War III, you have to follow X, they're wrong. I don't care if they're on the left or on the right. The fact is, what we are looking at are 3 regional wars. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran hate each other. They just happen to hate the United States and the West more than they hate each other. And they have been working together and coordinating to great degrees. They're selling oil and gas amongst each other, trading rockets and drones with each other to support their ability to attack the West and in particular the United States, both economically and physically. And so we are getting closer to what we believe will be the culmination in 2028 when China invades the Taiwan, as they have promised they are going to do. It's not a question if they will do it, it is when they will do it. We believe that will be about 2028. And by that time, we expect that you will see 3 full-scale regional wars happening around the world. Western Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia. And it seems to be coming true. And while everyone has been focused on what's happening in the Middle East at this moment, there's still the Ukraine Russia war that is continuing to go on, the proxy war of the United States against Russia. And we continue to put more and more money to that. Now, obviously, now that we have our Speaker of the House in place, Mike Johnson, and now that we can go and actually get the budget of the United States in place, we have less than 25 days to get that done. We have to have it done by November 14th. We have to have a budget in place for the United States, or we go bankrupt, or, well, not bankrupt. The United States starts shutting down because we're on a continuing resolution. We're running out of time to continue to fund the United States. And part of that funding is the money we're giving overseas, money we're giving to Ukraine, whether or not anything else gets paid for, and now money that has to go to, believe it or not, Hamas. According to Joe Biden, we want to give $105 billion to Hamas so that they can continue to fight a war against Israel and the United States. It makes no sense. And I know many people will say, but Mike, no, we're giving it to humanitarian aid. Okay, what is the government of Gaza Strip? The Gaza Strip has a government that runs things there. Which government was elected there? That was Hamas. And Hamas is a terrorist organization. That's just the facts. And all of the aid that goes in there, we can go and ask the Red Cross, the Red Crescent. You can check over history, and consistently, Hamas siphons off, if not outright takes away, the humanitarian aid that is being put out there, whether it's gas, water, money. They siphon that off, and they use that to commit acts of terrorism around the world, mostly centered on Israel, but around the world. And so we are funding global terror. It is indirect, but it is definitely happening. And this is what the Biden administration is doing. They are funding, during a time of war, they are funding Hamas, a bunch of terrorists. There seems to be no way around that. And I know it is unpleasant for some people who may support Hamas when they say they support Palestine. In other words, you're supporting the government of Gaza. That's terrorism. You're supporting terrorists. There is no way around that. You cannot say, I support the people. Well, the government of those people is Hamas. You may support the Iranian people. The government of Iran is a terrorist organization. It is, of course, the Ayatollah who want to kill Americans. It's very straightforward. Hello, Graham. Graham, it is good to see you here with us. And I'm glad you have a long drive today. That's always a good way to listen into these kind of programs. So we have what's happening in Russia. Ukraine is now expecting to receive even more money. The question is, will they receive that money given that, or receive additional funds? The money we've already given them cannot be stopped. Even if the government of the United States shuts down, you no longer are able to get your Social Security or your government aid in checks. Even if that were to shut down, we're still going to be giving money to both Hamas, and to the Ukraine. Does that make any sense? Think about it. We have less than 25 days to either fund the government, or we will continue to fund the terrorists of Hamas. We will continue to fund the government of the Ukraine, which is somewhat crooked. Even as money disappears, weapons disappear, we will continue to fund that war effort, but you will go hungry. Children in the United States will go hungry. This really doesn't make sense to me. And so it's very upsetting. But let's understand that this is still going on. And no one is talking about it anymore because the quick war, the quick defeat of Russia, and we have heard from, if you look at the mainstream approved messaging, from day one, we were told this would be a quick war. It would last about 1 month, and the Ukraine would beat back Russia. Didn't happen. Then we were told they would do it in 3 months. Then we were told it would take 6 months. Here we are going into 2 years, and what are we seeing in this? We now have F-16s, we have fighter planes, the F-35s. are going over. We have tanks, the M1 Abrams and the Bradley vehicles are going over and being destroyed en masse in 20 minutes. We have hundreds of millions of dollars going in. We have used up the reserves of the United States. Europe doesn't have any more bullets. They don't have ammunition. They are desperately trying to keep pace with their supply needs because everything has been given to Europe. The United States is depleting its reserves, and we're having to build up more to try and send over to the Ukraine, even as we are facing other threats. Now, I bring this all up to point out something. That shows that we are weak. It is showing Russia and China, Iran and North Korea that this is the perfect time for them to move forward. We cannot keep up with the supplies. We have not prepared. We do not have plans in place. This is why this is so dangerous. This is why we are seeing Iran working through Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and increasing its attempts to destroy anyone and everyone who doesn't believe what they believe. This is why we are seeing that Iran is supplying to drones and rockets to Russia and North Korea, and China is getting involved as well. This is a terrifying time. And now we have heard this week that the European Union decided, since they're running out of bullets to be able to send over to Ukraine, they're going to take the money that they have frozen from Russia and they're just going to capture that. And the response from Russia is, great, if you take our money, then we'll take your money, because there are European assets in Russia as well. And the sad thing is, even according to Forbes, there's more European assets in Russia than there are Russian assets in Europe. And this is an endemic of a problem that we have seen continuously in this battle with Ukraine and Russia. All of the sanctions that have been done have hurt the West more than they have hurt Russia. We haven't thought this through. We're doing knee-jerk reactions and they're not working. We're doing short-term actions that sound great, and the long-term consequence isn't in our benefit. We're hurting ourselves more than we are hurting anyone else. Tony Z has joined us. Thank you for joining us, Tony. Again, if you disagree with anything I'm saying, I'm perfectly happy to hear what you have to say. But I want you to understand, we have our poor leadership. Everyone is looking at the United States, which is the front runner. We are the ones who are leading the proxy war through the Ukraine against Russia. And we haven't thought out our plan. We don't know what is the best way to move forward to legitimately and long-term weaken Russia, either in the conflict in Ukraine or overall. And we have to start thinking about that, because everything that we're doing knee-jerk, these last minute, looks like a great headline, sounds like it's impressive, isn't working. Just going by and having the media collude with the White House, as the Supreme Court of the United States has said they can do. So the White House is colluding with Facebook, with YouTube, with Google, with the New York Times to be able to put the message in front of your face that says the White House is doing fantastic. Joe Biden has been correct all the way through. And yet we see failure after failure. We see that all of the promises they have made have not come true. And we are losing ground. We are getting weaker, and the rest of the world is seeing it. We need strong leadership. We need a plan. It's something that we've been saying on this channel since 2019. We have been asking, what is the foreign policy of the United States under the Biden-Harris administration? What is their plan? What is their policy? And since 2019, there has not been one Democrat, not one progressive, not one elected official that has been able to put forward what is their policy, what is their plan. In the meantime, as people have been trying to figure out what they have as a policy, what we have seen de facto, 5,000 Americans abandoned in Afghanistan, and the Biden administration just stopped talking about it. 10,000 Americans in the Ukraine abandoned. The Biden administration stopped talking about it. 15,000 Americans this year in April abandoned in the Sudan. The Biden administration stopped talking about it. There are hundreds of Americans who are currently being held hostage by Hamas. The Biden administration has downplayed that and talked up the fact that they got 2 hostages back. 2. We don't even know how many Americans have been taken hostage by Hamas, but the Biden administration's talking up the fact they got 2 hostages back after spending $100 million in humanitarian aid. Do you notice? The humanitarian aid was guaranteed by Biden first, then we got 2 hostages. It's kind of like what happened with Iran. We guaranteed $6 billion to Iran. They gave us 5 prisoners. Do you see how this is working out? This is the policy of the Biden-Harris administration. Meanwhile, we are hearing from sources around the world, credible news sources, that the Biden-Harris administration have abandoned at least 400 Americans in the Gaza Strip. That they are Americans who are trying to get out of Gaza. They do not support Hamas. They have family members there. They have business in the Gaza Strip. They are trying to get out to Egypt or to Israel. They are trying to leave the zone. And the United States State Department has no idea what they are doing. They have no way to get those people out. User has been banned. Thank you for joining us. User has been banned says, that's out. Okay, I'm not sure what you were typing there, user. The fanatical Islamists, you're talking about Al-Qaeda, you're talking about the Taliban, you're talking about ISIS, yeah, and Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. This is all the same group of people. Fundamentally, all the same group of people. I agree with you there. So this is important to understand. What we are seeing is endemic of the same source of problem. Weakness from the United States. The world is looking for our leadership, and they are not seeing it in Western Europe. They're not seeing it in the Middle East. They are not seeing it in Southeast Asia. And that is causing the world to become more and more chaotic. And it is most clearly exemplified in the fact that the Biden administration's policy, the only policy that can be clearly stated, is that the Biden administration will abandon any and all Americans all around the world at a moment's notice because it's good for re-election of Democrats, because he doesn't want the negative press, because he doesn't have a plan. And even now, for the people who are screaming about Hamas and they want to support Hamas, there are Americans, at least 400 Americans, trying to get out of Gaza, and the Biden administration doesn't care. They're not involved. They're not helping them. Forget about, even if you say, okay, well, they're not even doing anything about the hostages. Okay, hostages are difficult. You have to negotiate with a terrorist organization, which is not the policy of the United States, although Biden has been doing that. What about the people who aren't being held hostage? Oh, yeah, they're abandoned too. Biden has treated the Americans in Gaza the same way he's treated the Americans in Afghanistan, where we know at least 200 Americans have been captured by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, according to international intelligence agencies, and are being tortured at this moment. Just like at least a dozen or more Americans have been captured by Hamas and are being tortured right now. We got 2 of them home. That's fantastic. What about the rest? The news media is telling you, well, isn't it wonderful? Biden has done such a great job. He got 2 out of an unknown at least dozen Americans that have been taken hostage by Hamas, a terrorist organization. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cheer for the Biden-Harris administration or any president for doing less than the barest minimum. Get our get our Americans and bring them home. We have over 30,000 Americans in 4 hot zones, hell zones, war zones around the world, and the Biden-Harris administration is busier trying to tamp down any knowledge of these people than they are about getting them home. And that is a fact. Let me check on the comments here. By the way, if I'm looking directly at the camera, I can't see the comments. So when I turn, this is when I can see the comments. I apologize if I missed your comment as I do that. Yeah, they are attacking individuals for being Christian, for being anything that is not a very specific radical Islamist fanatical view. I mean, that's what the Ayatollah supports. And they want to destroy anyone that doesn't agree with the Ayatollah. That is a fact. This is their declared statement. We know for a fact Hamas, in its written statements, in its declared statements, they want to kill anyone who doesn't believe what they believe, in particular, Israel. This is so when you support the pro-Palestine movement is a nice way of saying you support Hamas. And we have seen over and over again, we'll get into it, many of these movements aren't even pretending that they're not supporting genocide and terrorism, whether it's at colleges or at various events like the 7,000 people in New York City, in Brooklyn, yesterday that were shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge and were openly saying that they want to destroy Israel, that they want to commit acts of genocide. That's terrorism. How do we respond to that is another question. And that's the question that faces the world at this moment. But I wanted to remind people that we are still dealing with Ukraine, and that's part of the reason why we're looking at 3 regional wars. The Biden administration cannot deal with the Ukraine and any other conflict in the world. They can't handle Americans who have been abandoned, 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan. They can't deal with that while trying to deal with 10,000 Americans abandoned in the Ukraine, 15,000 abandoned in the Sudan, and 400 in Gaza, as well as hostages. They can't keep up. That is a problem. That is a weak leader. That is a lack of planning, foresight, or policy. That needs to be addressed, and we need to make a plan. I don't care. Whatever the plan. I'm not saying to have the perfect plan. I'm not saying that we need the best plan. I'm not even saying that we should have a good plan. We need a plan. We need to show that we can multitask as a nation and as a leadership, that we can multitask and get our people home from Afghanistan at the same time that we can get our people back home from Ukraine, at the same time that we can get our people home from the Sudan, at the same time we can get our people back from Gaza Strip and free the hostages that we know exist in each of these areas. We need to multitask. It would be nice if the United States government could just focus on one issue internationally or even domestically, just one at a time. That's not the way the world works. And we have to address the world in the way the world exists. Not the way that we want it to exist, but the way that it does exist. Which means we need different leadership. Absolutely, positively, we need different leadership because we have seen, if you're waiting for Kamala Harris to figure out a way to help us, remember, Kamala Harris still hasn't figured out how to deal with the border. She's been given that job since March of 2021, and we have record numbers of illegal immigrants entering the United States, abusing our systems, and crushing our economy. And you want her to try and figure it out? I don't think that's going to happen. Joe Biden is barely able to walk across a flat stage. We have a problem, folks. Now, I know the counter argument by some people will be, but Mike, it's reported by ABC News, October 26th, 3 days ago, that the United States is attacking, we've been fighting against Iran and the Iran-backed militias, terrorist organizations in Syria and Iraq just this week. And the answer is, of course, yes, we did. But I would pose the question, why did we do that? Why did America fire back? Because we came under fire, because we were attacked initially. See, that's the big difference there. Did the United States respond? Of course we did. But we were attacked. Iran is making its statement very clear, that because Iran has made it clear throughout this week and recently in the last couple of weeks that they wanted the United States to pressure Israel and tell Israel not to go after Hamas, that they wanted. Iran has been telling the United States, if you do not stop Israel, if you allow Israel to go on in the ground to have troops enter into Gaza to try and stop Hamas, then the United States will be threatened. The United States will be attacked by Iran. And immediately after making that promise, that's when we saw Iran-led terrorist organizations in Syria and in Iraq attack the Americans. They were making it clear. They were showing us by example what they're willing to do. And so we responded. But see, that's the thing. We're responding. We're retroactively reacting. We're just reacting. There is no plan there. There is nothing that says, okay, but we're going to stop you. Yes, we attacked back. Did we prevent them? Did we make a statement that says, don't do this again in the future? I don't think we have. Tony Z says, Mike, I hear there's someone in Florida that is attempting rescue missions to bring some citizens back stateside. I forget who it is exactly. Actually, yes, there is. There are organizations and the Florida state government as well, with Ron DeSantis, the governor, have been working and have been bringing Americans back from Israel and from Hamas, from Gaza, back into the United States. Part of that is because under the Biden administration, if you are an American in Israel, not in Afghanistan, not in the Ukraine, not in the Sudan, if you are in Israel and you are trying to come back to America, the United States government will bring you, well, they're claiming that they're going to help you get out of Israel into Egypt or some other nation so that you can then come home. And they're going to charge you money for it. They are charging you to escape a war zone, which is incredible to me. It's astounding to me. But there are volunteer organizations in Florida in particular that are helping Americans, just as there have been American Christian groups that have been trying to help Americans that have been abandoned in Afghanistan to get out. In fact, all the people who have been able to escape since September 1st of 2021, who have been able to get out of Afghanistan, have been because of American volunteers and religious organizations, volunteers that have helped Americans get out of Afghanistan. That's it. The State Department has failed. The Biden-Harris administration has completely failed. And that's why they charge Americans. We said this a year ago. If you're going overseas, do not count on the Biden-Harris administration to defend you or to protect you or to try and save you. Have a backup plan. And we see that now. You need a backup plan. You need as much money as it is to whatever your trip, whether you're going on a vacation or a business trip, you need more money for your backup plan in the bank than you're spending on going to wherever you're going. So it is terrifying. And yes, thank God that Americans are willing to do what the Biden-Harris administration is not willing to do, to go out and actually help bring people back home. Otherwise, none of them would be coming back home. Not if we were relying just on the Biden administration and the State Department. It would not happen. So I was mentioning that. And this is very important because the rest of the world is watching this. And the rest of the world is saying, wait a minute, the United States, they can't even get their own people home? The United States government is just leaving their people to be tortured by ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hamas? The Biden administration, the American government, is cowering, running away from people like the Taliban, that they have no control over where their people are, that even the Sudan, warlords in the Sudan are so powerful that the Biden administration will run away from the Sudan, abandoning 15,000. This is a small town. The population of a small town have been left in the Sudan to figure out how they will get home on their own. And the Biden administration won't even say they would help get them to another country and charge the money. It's not even as good as, I mean, at least if you're stuck in Israel, if you're stuck in Gaza, they're saying, hey, we'll get you out, but you're going to have to pay us for it. It's a commodity. You have to pay to get out of a war zone. You can't even get that offer in the Sudan or Ukraine or in Afghanistan. The Biden administration just wrote you off. And the mainstream news media, because they are allowed to collude with the White House, because they are able to censor and suppress any unapproved message, which they have done. This is what we've seen with the Twitter files. We saw that the Biden-Harris administration went to the courts to allow them to collude with the news media on what is approved messaging and what is not. This is the state of the world right now. Most Americans don't realize, you know how many people I've talked to don't even realize that 15,000 Americans were abandoned this year in the Sudan? Do you know how many Americans don't even realize there's 400 Americans at least in Gaza Strip that are trying to escape that can't? I'm not talking about Palestinians. I'm talking about American citizens, American passport, want to get out and they can't. And the State Department's not doing anything about it. Do you know how many Americans know about that? Almost none. News media doesn't want to talk about it. They do not want to talk about this. They do not want you to know about this. And my point is we need to. Because as we are showing weakness to the rest of the world, the problem only gets worse. We are seeing that Russia is stepping up its actions. China is stepping up its actions. We are seeing more and more militarization, more of the logistics for a war, 3 regional wars happening simultaneously. And when the Biden administration tries to go on ABC News and say, see, we're doing our job. We're protecting Americans because we fought back against the terrorist organizations in Iraq and in Syria. Yeah, but there's 400 Americans that are in Gaza. There are dozens of Americans that are being held as hostages. There are 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan, 15,000 in Sudan, 10,000 in Ukraine. You cannot tell me that America, under the Biden-Harris administration, has made a statement against Iran when those numbers exist, that they are internationally verified for years. You can't say that. But that's what the Biden administration is doing, and that's because they are able to collude with ABC News, NBC, because they are able to create an approved message list and suppress any and other news agency that is going against that. We showed you last week. YouTube came out with a brand new policy. They are going to push the approved messages of established news media rather than allowing you to have a conversation like I am about that established news media. They are suppressing every voice except the approved voices. This is coming from YouTube itself. They made the announcement last week. We showed you the announcement from The Verge. Now, when I say that this is a plan by Iran, and Iran is testing and showing the world that the Biden administration is both cowardly and without a plan, remember that it was October 26th that in the UN, Iran warned the United States. They said, quote, and I'm quoting this from Reuters, October 26, 12:30 in the afternoon, they said, quote, I say frankly to the American statesmen who are now managing the genocide in Palestine. There is no genocide in Palestine. By the way, Palestine doesn't exist. that we do not welcome an expansion of the war in the region. But if the genocide in Gaza, it's not a genocide, continues, then they will not be spared from this fire. That the American people will not be spared if Israel defends itself. Iran has made a direct threat against America. They did that on October 26th. In fact, there's even more of this. We see that they doubled down a day ago, yesterday, October 28th, as reported by the Hindustan Times. This is coming from Hussein Amiradolahan. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't. He's an Iranian foreign minister, and he said on Hindustan Times, quoted by Bloomberg as well, if the United States continues what it has been doing so far, then new fronts will be opened up against the United States. And also, October 29th, today, the Iranian foreign minister deflects questions about threatening the United States. He will not respond. This is coming from Politico, as reported today. They don't want to talk about, well, you just said on the 26th, on the 28th, that America is going to be attacked, that we're going to have attacks on multiple fronts. This is going to be terrorist organizations backed by Iran. The $6 billion coming from the Biden administration are going to be used to attack Americans and American assets around the world. And his answer is, well, we support Hamas. Think about that, folks. Does that sound like an effective policy? Does that sound like Biden has done anything effective? I see the comments. Tony says, the American hostage situation is because Biden put a price on our heads and he is paying, which I agree. Hot Chicks. Hey, it's good to see you, Hot Chicks. Hot Chick says, well, I can't say that. Hot Chicks. You get me in trouble. You get me banned, Hot Chicks. Be careful. So this is a problem. We know that Iran is more than willing to attack America. By the way, consider, this is important, because Iran is using the open border situation to their advantage. There are 169 known or suspected terrorists in the United States as we speak. Let me say that again, 169. As of June, we thought it was 140. No, the number has increased. It's now 169 known or suspected terrorists in the United States that we have caught. And God knows how many we have not caught. Some estimates would say it's 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 5. We're not sure. But it is bigger than the 169 we have found. And we know that Iran has been infiltrating the refugee exodus and infiltrating the United States, both legally and illegally. We know that the Arizona border over the summer was welded open, that the gates were welded open, and hundreds, literally thousands of illegal aliens just walked into Arizona. How many of them were terrorists? We don't know. We didn't catch all of them. We just had the video evidence of the gates being welded open as part of the Biden-Harris administration's open border policy, and thousands entered the United States. Remember, Hamas didn't just attack the United States, attack Israel overnight. They planned this out somewhere between a year to 2 years of planning before they made their attack. The open border policy of the Biden-Harris administration has been in place since March, February of 2021. That is years. And now they are threatening that they will attack Americans everywhere in the world, that they will open new fronts, American soil, fronts to attack Americans in their homes because we dare to support our only ally in the Middle East. We dare to not support genocide. And what is the rest of the world saying? What's your plan, America? Hey, Biden, what's your plan? Russia's saying, you've got no plan. We'll keep going into Ukraine. China is saying, you've got no plan. Why can't we take over Taiwan? North Korea is saying, oh, you've got no plan, so we can put more pressure on Japan and South Korea. These things are interconnected, and this is why we're seeing so much inflation and so many problems around the world. And so I'm trying to make sure I give you this bit of information. And again, the links will be in the description, but this is all interconnected. If you start with weakness and a lack of planning, you end with chaos. And that's what we have right now. And this chaos is not restricted to just overseas. If you think that there have not been terrorists that have invaded the United States, you're not paying attention to the details. I understand it is not the approved message of CNN or the New York Times or ABC News. They don't want to talk about 169 known terrorists in America and more that we have not caught yet. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want you to think about it because you may not vote Democrat. You may not vote for Biden in 2024 if you were to realize that terrorists have been invading America at exponentially higher numbers than they have in the past. And when I say that, in 2020, there were 3 known or suspected terrorists that were caught entering into America. 3. In 2023, today, under the Biden administration, 169. Do you understand the difference there? We're talking about almost 200 versus 3. The magnitude is enormous. It's terrifying to me. It should be terrifying to you. That is 169 potential 9/11s in America at this moment. How can that not terrify you? Especially as we hear Iran as recently as a day ago, October 28th, saying they're going to go and create brand new areas of attacking America, that they're not satisfied with attacking Americans in Syria or attacking Americans in Iraq. They want to attack Americans in your home. And we have an open border, and we know that we are catching terrorists consistently. And the rest of the world is saying, America, you got to have a plan. Give us a plan. What do we do? Because they're looking for us to give us a plan. Do we buy back our hostages? Do we support Israel and go in by force to get our hostages? Do we make deals for the hostages like America did for the 5 hostages, $6 billion? What do we do? And the answer from the Biden-Harris administration is tell the news media to not talk about it and get us through the next election. It's really upsetting. And I don't care. You can watch the Housewives, watch your football game. Guess what? If you, whether you are going overseas or not, this is a threat to you. This is a threat to every single American, no matter where you are in the world, and to all of our allies around the world. This is a threat, and we don't have an answer. It's even getting worse than that. So we know that Iran has made these threats. They've continuously made these threats. We have the documented responses of that. Meanwhile, Israel is saying they're going to have the ground war. Now, this is what we were told, that if Israel entered into Gaza with troops, people on the ground, to try and secure Gaza and to secure the people of Israel, to protect themselves, that if Israel did that, the United States would suffer. Well, this is day 2 going into day 3 of Israel on the ground. And Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel has said, they're going to keep at this. This is going to be a long-term effort. This is not going to be over in a day. It's not going to be over in a week. This is something that's going to take a lot of time, and they're going to take as much time as is needed to attack Hamas. Notice, they're not attacking the people of Palestine. They're attacking Hamas. But if you look at the news media around the world, you won't get that message. There's an article that came out from the Jerusalem Post, came out from the news media, that we are hearing, well, Israel was bombing a hospital. No, not the first time, not the one that Rashida Tlaib misled the world and lied and said that, well, Israel attacked a hospital. That was last week. No. This week, today, that the Al-Quds hospital was Israel, like it does in every single case, dropped leaflets and told people evacuate the area. That Hamas, that prisoners of Hamas have been interrogated, and they found out that there is a Hamas base just below and around the Al-Quds hospital. Oh, did the mainstream media forget to mention that there is evidence that there is a Hamas base in the hospital because Hamas uses human shields? Did you miss that news? Did you not find that out? Because if you're listening to MSNBC, you're not going to get that. If you're listening to CNN, if you're listening to CBS News, if you're listening to New York Times, you're not going to get that news. If you're looking at the international news media, like Reuters, like the Jerusalem Post, the Hindustan Times, BBC, Guardian, if you're looking at the international news, you'll find out Israel actually captured members of Hamas. Those prisoners said, no, there's a base in a hospital because Hamas uses hospitals and schools and children as human shields. And so on foot, Israel is going into that area to fight Hamas. And therefore, they dropped leaflets ahead of time and said, hey, we have soldiers and tanks and troops that are coming in to fight Hamas, and they are in and around the hospital. Be prepared. Oh, but the rest of the major news media, the pro-Hamas media, say, oh, they're attacking a hospital. No, they're not. They're not attacking the hospital. They're fighting near the hospital, but they're not attacking the hospital. And they're attacking Hamas, who are using the hospital as human shields. Again. But this is the kind of way that we see this. And this is coming out, and we hear this. I mean, you can go to the Financial Times. There was an article by Guy Chazan in Jerusalem 5 hours ago from the Financial Times talking all about this. It's not something that I'm making up. This is the reality. We have to put this into context. Because as we listen to college after college in the United States, the main argument we are hearing are from pro-Hamas organizations like Rashida Tlaib, like Ilhan Omar, like Harvard University, Tufts University, Cornell University. We're hearing from the colleges, we're hearing from the far left that support genocide as a means to get what they want. These are the people who are more than happy to use force to make you do what they say, to believe what they believe. You don't get a choice in it. And they are willing to lie to your face. And they are using the ability of the White House to collude with social media and the news media to send out an approved message that says Hamas is not a bad guy. Hamas is good. And Hamas equals Palestine. It doesn't. They're not the same thing, or at least they aren't exactly the same thing. They're not, the people aren't the government, but the government is supported by the people. I know this is a little complicated. I'm trying to make sure I give you as much information as I can from as many sources around the world because I know most people aren't looking at what's happening and what's being reported by Reuters or the Associated Press or the Financial Times or the Hindustan Times or Japan Times, Times of Israel, BBC, The Guardian. Most people are looking at NBC, CNN, maybe they're looking at the New York Times, and that's where they're getting most of their news. I'm sorry, that's not enough. They're not giving you the full story. They are highly editing this in the United States so that they can tell you the story in 30 seconds to a minute and a half. You can't. That's why you don't know that there are 400 Americans abandoned in Gaza by the Biden-Harris administration, that the State Department isn't getting them out, that Americans in Israel are told they have to pay the United States government to get out of Israel. You're not being told the whole story. You're being told snippets that are manipulated, and then you get groups like the pro-Hamas organizations, the protest in Brooklyn, where people are taking over the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge. And I really have a problem with this. So you're telling me that if I do not support Hamas, if I do not support terrorism, if I do not support a group of people who have taken Americans hostage, have tortured them, and are using them as human shields, if I do not support that, you're going to prevent people from going to and from work. You're going to prevent people from living their lives. You're going to shut down the Brooklyn Bridge. You're going to interrupt business and people's lives in New York City that have nothing to do with this, that probably don't even know any of this is going on. You're going to force people to suffer, which is exactly what they did in Brooklyn, what we are seeing happen in Dearborn, Michigan, what we are seeing happening at Cooper Union, the college in New York City, what we have been seeing happening across this nation. That the far left are saying, you must obey. The BLM of Chicago, the Democratic Socialists of America, you must obey, or else. And that's supposed to motivate you to be on their side. No, that's coercion. That is terrorism. It is definitely insurrectionist. You're being told that they will use force against you, and it is force. If you shut down a highway, you shut down a bridge, you shut down commerce, you shut down people's ability to go to and from work, to live their lives, that is force. That is an act of violence. Well, let me correct that, because now that's the way the left would look at it. If the right were to shut down a bridge, that would be violence. But when the left shuts down a bridge, when the left shuts down a highway, well, that's not violent, that's just a protest. But if you do it on the right, that's violence. Because they have a shifting system of equating what is and isn't anything. If the left does it, it's not so bad. If the right does it, it's absolutely the end of the world. And we are seeing these things happen here in the United States over and over again. And the world is watching, and they're saying, America has no idea what to do. America has no leadership. And that means they have to try and figure it out on their own. And they don't have an answer for that. By the way, when I say that Hamas, that the Biden-Harris administration have abandoned Americans in Gaza, that news is coming from MSNBC, just so you know. The article is October 29th, came out at 6 a.m. this morning. It is written by Sami Nabulsi, Nabulsi. That is the name of and the title of the article was Hopeless and Abandoned, How It Feels to Be a U.S. Citizen Trapped in Gaza. I'm not making this stuff up. This is coming from the mainstream news media. If you know where to look, it's not the most popular news article that's out there. This isn't a story that anyone's going to talk about. They reported it and buried the story. I'm quoting from that article, and it says, the State Department has accused Hamas militants of blocking the crossing In a news conference Thursday, 5 days after at the Ocals, American citizens were attempting to get out of Gaza. The State Department's United States Department spokesman Matthew Miller said, quote, "At times on the Gaza side of the border, there has been no one there from Hamas to open the gates and process people and let them through. And at other times, there have been people, actually armed Hamas militants, standing at the border of Gaza and Egypt, not letting people approach the gate." So either Hamas is saying no one's at the border, so you can't cross it, or if they are there, you can't cross it because they'll shoot you if you try. That's Hamas doing that. That's not Israel stopping anyone from getting out. That's this United States government failing to be able to protect its own people from trying to get out of a war zone. This is coming from NBC News. You don't have to like it. That's just the fact. And even the left is admitting it. That's from today's article from NBC News. MSNBC to be exact. So Hamas is they know that having hundreds of Americans in Gaza are human shields. The more Americans they have, the more hostages, whether they're direct hostages, which we know they have over a dozen of them at least, as they have them direct hostages and just having Americans in the Gaza Strip, those are human shields. And they know it. And that's why they won't let Americans out. And that's why the State Department has been useless. Because we haven't made it clear to Hamas, you can't take Americans hostage. Because apparently under the Biden-Harris administration, you can. Because it's happening in 4 other parts of the world. Under the Biden-Harris administration. And the world is saying, well, if the Biden-Harris administration is willing to let any country and any terrorist organization capture Americans, we can't trust America. America is not going to support anyone. All the links to everything I'm talking about will be in the description at the end of the show, unless my second screen finally works, and then I'll bring it up there. And remember, when I was talking about the 7,000 pro-Hamas protesters at the Brooklyn Bridge, that was reported by, amongst other places, October 28th. That came from the New York Post. And it was very interesting in that article from the New York Post. Let me see here. Where is that quote I have? There are people, as quoted by the New York Post, like Jason B., a Puerto Rican who is a native of New York City, and says, "I support the solidarity of the Palestinian people because of the genocide right now." See, that's one of the things you keep hearing. You'll hear the left say this a lot. Well, there's a genocide in Palestine. There's a genocide in Palestine. There's a genocide in Palestine. They love to say this. This is exactly, they are parroting what Iran has said. Except there is no genocide. First of all, there's no Palestine. No such country exists on the face of the earth. So when they say, oh, it's Palestine, they're lying to you to start with. There is no such country. Does not exist. 2, no one in the Middle East is trying to make Palestine except Israel and the Gaza Strip. That's it. Hamas wants a nation. Israel, some of them want that, but you're not seeing support from Egypt, from Jordan, from Syria, from anyone except Iran, of course. They want it. Why? Because the rest of the Middle East don't care about the Palestinians. This is why Egypt didn't open its border. It's why Egypt hasn't been leading in the support, the number of refugees that they're taking, the amount of humanitarian aid that they're giving. Jordan, Syria, they're not helping the Palestinians. They don't care. The Middle East doesn't care about the Palestinian people. That's a fact. Israel cares more about the Palestinian people than the rest of the Middle East. Israel provides more humanitarian aid to the people of Palestine than Hamas or any of the rest of the Middle East. People may not like that, but that is the fact. I love it. User Bandis says, the left doesn't know what words mean. You're right. They don't. They change the meaning of words on a regular basis. And we see it all the time. So let's debunk this. Let's really go through this. They keep saying it's a genocide. So first of all, Palestine doesn't exist. The Middle East, the other nations in the Middle East don't care about the Palestinian people. That's also a fact. But in terms of a genocide, remember, we know that Hamas has as a written form part of its charter, its constitution, as well as its public statements since October 7th to this day, and also by Iran, they want to genocide Israel. They want to kill everyone who is Jewish, everyone who does not believe in their religion. They have made that clear over and over. They have put it in writing. They have made it in public statements. That's one of the reasons why they attacked on October 7th. They want to genocide. That is a fact, and they have made it clear. When they say genocide, they mean, what's the saying that you hear from all of these Hamas supporters? From the mountains to the sea, they want to remove everyone. That's genocide. That is a genocide. That is a declaration that you want to eliminate a group of people. You want to end their existence just because they are that group of people. Has Israel ever tried to eliminate the Palestinian people? Not to isolate them, to put them in Gaza Strip, to give them a section of land, not to give them rules, laws, to give them order. No. We're not talking about organizing the people or even isolating the people, if you want to even go there. That's not a genocide. A genocide is the planned elimination of these people. Hamas is absolutely fighting a war of genocide. Iran is fighting a war of genocide. That is absolutely true. You can't say that about Israel. Even if you're saying, oh, but they are going overboard and fighting, they're overboard and this is too much. Maybe you could say that. That's not a genocide. They are not systemically going into Gaza and killing all the Palestinians. They are not. They warn people. They give them notice about evacuation. They have military targets that they are trying to achieve and target. That's not a genocide. It sounds really good for the left. It sounds like, it's a battle because they're fighting genocide. They're willing to commit genocide to fight genocide. No, that's not real. That is a lie. That is a manipulation of your emotions and a lie about the facts on the ground. You can say Israel's heavy-handed in the way that they are dealing with it. Absolutely, you can make that argument. You can't call it a genocide. You can say Hamas is trying to commit genocide because they've already told you they are. You can say that Iran is definitely supporting that because they have said they are. And we have seen the evidence of that. But you can't say it the other way around. You can't say that about Israel. But the left loves to say that. Why? Because if you don't know, it sounds very impressive. It sounds very important. Oh, I wouldn't want to support genocide. Then why are you supporting Hamas? But Hamas are good people. They don't do that. Yes, they do. They've actually declared it in words and in writing and in action. Let's see. Tony Z says, hell, the left doesn't even know what bathroom she is. You're funny, Tony. It's true. It's true, though. So again, I'm going by the news that is out there. And if you were to ask those 7,000, many of the people, the 7,000 in New York, if you ask the students at Harvard or at Cooper Union, in many of the colleges, Cornell University, where they are excited, they're exhilarated that Americans have been taken hostage, that women and children being killed, babies have been killed for the mere fact that they exist, not as collateral damage. They were directed targets. If you were to ask them, who's committing genocide? Did you know that Hamas has declared that they want to genocide anyone who is Jewish, anyone who has a faith other than their own? They would often tell you, no, they didn't know that. They didn't know that it's a written document, that's something that they have promised over and over again verbally, because they're being misinformed. And I know I keep mentioning Cooper Union. Why am I bringing up the Cooper Union? Because that happened this week. This week, there was Cooper Union, where, let me try and break this down properly. And a lot of people may not be familiar with this. Again, the news did not go national. It should have, it didn't. Cooper Union isn't as famous as Harvard or as famous as Cornell or Tufts University, but it's not unknown. Cooper Union is a college, mostly an liberal arts college in New York City, not too far away from 34th Street, where the Democratic Socialists of America were protesting, not too far away from the Brooklyn Bridge, where the Democrats were protesting, the progressives were protesting. And a bunch of Jewish students, pro-Israel students, this week, they went outside and they said, hey, we want the hostages freed. The hostages being used as human shields by Hamas. Hamas has captured people from around the world, including American citizens, and they are using them as human shields and hostages. And this is a violation of the Geneva human rights and war crime, and Hamas should release them. A bunch of pro-Hamas students were counter-protesting, saying, shut up, stop talking about the hostages. That was the event at Cooper Union. And for about a half hour, there were the pro-Israel students saying, release the hostages, and you had the pro-Hamas students saying, stop talking about the hostages. They didn't refute that Hamas has the hostages. They're not refuting that the hostages are being used as human shields. They're not refuting the fact that many of these hostages have been abused sexually and physically. No. The pro-Hamas students just said, shut up, stop talking about it. Okay. So the Cooper Union students, the pro-Israel students, go into their college. They go into the library. The protest has ended. They go into the library. They're living their life. They're going on about their day. The pro-Hamas students followed them and are shouting and screaming and banging as they are tracking those pro-Israel students. That would be called a threat. That is called menacing. You could even say it's coercion, trying to silence those students from ever speaking again. Security guards tried to stop the pro-Hamas Cooper Union students, stop them from chasing down the pro-Israel free the hostages students. The pro-Hamas students push past the security. Security guards who are watching this happen in fear, terrified for the life of these students, lock the Jewish students, the pro-Israel students, lock them in the library to protect them from the pro-Hamas protesters that were trying to chase them down. The pro-Hamas Cooper Union students are banging on the windows and trying to break down the door to get to the Jewish students that ended their protests and walked away, merely because the Hamas students want to silence them, because they don't want anyone to know about the hostages, because they want to force silence. Obey or be silent. That's what Hamas is trying to push. That's what the progressives are trying to push. And I think that explains it very clearly how evil Hamas is and how evil it is to support the Hamas movement. And the thing that really got me, and I did a short on this, I showed the New York Times coverage of this event, which a link will be in the description at the end of the show, so you can see the short for yourself. It takes about 52 seconds. The 7th paragraph describes how the pro-Israel students went to the library. They were locked in the library by the security to protect those students as the pro-Hamas protesters banged on the walls, banged on the doors, tried to enter, and they weren't looking to give these Israeli students, these pro-Israel students, a hug. This wasn't about, rainbows and unicorns. They were being violent. They had an intent that was violent. That's why they chased the students into the building. That's why they chased the students to the library and were trying to break in. That's why the doors had to be locked. And then, so that's the 7th paragraph from the New York Times. In the 8th paragraph, first sentence from the New York Times, they say, no, there was no one harmed. No one was intended to be harmed. No one intended to harm the students. There was no threat. And no one was arrested for any threat. That's the 8th paragraph from the New York Times about what happened at Cooper Union. So the New York Times is trying to tell you that what they just reported in the 7th paragraph, which matches what every major and minor news agency said, is not a threat. That just because you had to be locked into a room to prevent someone from confronting you, from being violent against you, even as they scream epithets and racial slurs at you, as they bang on the walls, they try and break the glass, they try and break the doors, that's not a threat because it's pro-Hamas. And the news media dropped that story. They did not want to talk about it. I did. And of course, that was downplayed, and the mainstream media working with the White House said, that's not an approved message. We can't talk about it. Yes, the New York Times did bury that in an article and covering the news about it. They buried that in the bottom part of their article. And of course, no one noticed the absolute idiocy of saying, hey, they were acting violently, but that's not violence. No one wanted to call out the New York Times on that. And how dare I call out the New York Times for that? I must be some kind of crazy, radical English comprehension Nazi. Because I understood that if you tell me in the first paragraph that someone was using threats of violence, and then in the next paragraph you tell me, but that's not violent, I'm going to tell you you're lying, you're manipulating people, it is emotional manipulation. And the rest of the world that is reading the New York Times, people in the United Kingdom, in Canada, people in Europe, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, when they are reading that, the news, all the news that is fit to print, they're hearing that America is saying it's okay to be violent against certain people. That's what they are reading around the world. That's what they are hearing. It's okay. America condones. The colleges, the leaders, where the future leaders of America in terms of industry, in terms of politics, they come from our colleges. And our colleges are saying it's okay to be violent against certain people. And the rest of the world is saying, if that's okay, how do I get on the list of people that's all right? I want to be protected. Which people are the ones that are protected? Who's making that decision? Because you can't trust America if they're willing to attack people, if they're willing to genocide people, if they're willing to support genocide of people, which is humanitarian aid to Hamas. User has been banned mentions that, as reported by The Independent, which is a United Kingdom newspaper, one of the quotes is, "I have never been so terrified. A Star of David was graffitied on the Berlin homes in echo of the persecution, German persecution." Yes, we are seeing this. This is a reality. And guys, it only gets worse if we allow the mainstream news media to only promote approved messages and don't have these conversations and let them bury the news stories that are happening around the world. If we bury what's happening in Dearborn, Michigan, if we bury what's really happening with the Brooklyn Bridge and the anti-Semitism that's being promoted there, if we bury the news about the anti-Semitism that's going on at Cooper Union, I guarantee you the next time it's going to be against you because you're a Christian, or maybe because you're a Buddhist, maybe because you're anything but the right type of fanatical Islamist. Maybe it's going to be because of your political ideology. Maybe you're one of those evil MAGA Republicans, as they like to tell us. And maybe that's just the same thing as not being the right kind of religious belief. They're going to come after you. They are coming after each and every one of us. And the world's saying, who's safe? I can't trust America when the future leaders of America condone genocide. They condone terrorism. And it's being buried, and no one cares. The news media is part of the problem. The government is part of the problem. How can I trust that? And if they don't trust America, do you think they're going to have better or worse trade deals with America? Do you think they're going to be more of an ally to us when we need allies? Do you think they're going to actually support us? Or do you think they're going to use us and keep us at arm's distance at all times? Do you think they're going to make worse trade deals with us rather than being our friends and giving us a good price and good deals, that they're going to try and take advantage of us at every turn and isolate us from the rest of the world? Which one do you think is more likely to happen if they think that the future leaders of America believe in terrorism and genocide? It's a very important question. It's very important to consider. But the news media doesn't want you to consider that. It's kind of like what happened in Congress this week. It was this week in Congress that, what's his name? Congressman Jimenez out of Florida, Florida's 28th district, was it was a congressional hearing, and he was speaking to Thomas S. Warwick. He is part of the advisors for the Biden-Harris administration to determine the future of counterterrorism in the United States. He is responsible for helping to shape our policy to protect America and Americans. Counterterrorism. That's what he does. He did it under the Obama administration. He's doing it for the Biden administration. That's his job. Counterterrorism, trying to get the Department of Homeland Security to make America safe for you and for me. And in a congressional hearing, speaking to Florida Congressman Jimenez of Florida's 28th District, Thomas Warwick, the advisor to the Biden administration, would not admit that Iran has declared for 40 years, 4 decades, that they want to destroy America. Again, I have a short video on that, and you can see that in the description after the show, unless my second screen comes up. And I'll show you that. It's about, I think it's a 40-second video, and it's real simple. He refuses to admit that Iran has said for 4 decades death to America? His answer was, well, they can't. Well, that's not the question. The question was, do they want to? And he refuses to answer that question. He refuses to acknowledge that the threat coming from Iran is inherent, that they have been saying it for 4 decades. He will not say that publicly. And that tells you a lot about where the Biden-Harris administration is. Even as Iran is attacking Americans in Syria, in Iraq, even as they are threatening to attack Americans on our soil, even as they have terrorists infiltrate America through the open borders, like in Arizona where the gates are welded open, even as the threat is increasing against America and our allies, the advisors of the Biden-Harris administration, the advisors to the Democratic Party, the advisors that are progressive in their ideology refuse to admit the obvious and absolute truth. And they go onto college campuses like at Harvard, like at Cooper Union, Binghamton University, Cornell, they go Tufts University, they're going to these universities, they're teaching these kids, oh, genocide is perfectly fine as long as you're a progressive going against anyone else. This is what they want to do to your kids. Colleges have become sources of indoctrination. Tony says, they're definitely trying to isolate us. And actually, we're kind of seeing it now in the freight sector that we are being isolated. Yes, I know. And by the way, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Bill Maher. Yes, Bill Maher from Real Time with Bill Maher, the HBO show. The far leftist Bill Maher, a progressive Bill Maher, last week came out and made it clear colleges like Harvard, like Binghamton University, like Cornell, like Cooper Union are indoctrination centers. They're not there to teach our kids. They're there to indoctrinate our next generation, our generation of leaders. They are there to turn them into progressives, members of the Democratic Socialists of America, to make them more like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Angela Presley, Rashida Tlaib, to make them hate America, hate the Constitution, and to try and change America into Venezuela. That's Bill Maher who said that. Mind you, I am no great fan of Bill Maher. I think Bill Maher is an extremist who likes to flip-flop on a regular basis. Whenever he notices something is affecting him, then he gets upset. Bill Maher was happy to see a recession until it affected his pocket with him and his friends. Then he came out and said, well, this recession is really a bad idea. Why is Biden doing this? Even though he asked for it. Bill Maher is the kind of guy who turns around and says, oh, well, Me Too is really, really important, except if it would stop you from voting for Joe Biden, then it doesn't matter. Me Too is not as important as electing Joe Biden. He actually said that May 2020. You can check it out for yourself. Look it up. And so last week, Bill Maher comes out and says, well, colleges are there to indoctrinate students. And then we see what's been happening at Harvard. We see what's been happening at Cooper Union. We see what's happening at Binghamton University back in 2019, 2016. They are indoctrinating our kids. He's being absolutely honest. It's just that he keeps, every time he tells you the truth, then he turns around and to continue to keep his credibility amongst Hollywood, to keep his credibility amongst the left, he then turns around and he starts doing stupid things like attacking the Speaker of the House. Iran or Iran? You mean, Tony, you mean Iran in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, they did say that. So Bill Maher, he comes out and he says, oh, well, the colleges especially the higher colleges, the better named colleges, are all about indoctrination. And then this week he comes out and says, oh, by the way, the new Speaker of the House, who is Mike Johnson, by the way, if you didn't follow the news, Mike Johnson was elected. He's a Republican. He was elected Speaker of the House, which is good news. You should be happy about that. Even if you're a Democrat, even if you're progressive, you should be happy that we have a Speaker of the House, because that means that we can get our budget taken care of, that we can actually do the business of the government. We couldn't do that until we had a Speaker of the House. So now we can go forward with that. You would think they'd be happy. And Mike Johnson is a establishment Republican. He's not an extremist. But then again, he's a Republican. And according to Democratic Socialists of America, according to the Progressive Party, the Progressive Caucus of Congress, if you're talking about Democrats in Congress and in our government, any Republican is, of course, an extremist. Anyone who does not bow down and obey the progressive movement is an extremist, according to them. So Mike Johnson suddenly is now an extremist. That doesn't make any sense. And what are we seeing them say? What are we seeing the left attack Mike Johnson about? A man you probably never have heard of, who has been in elected office in the House of Representatives for 8 years in a row. He has been reelected 4 times by his constituents. What do they have to say? Oh, Mike Johnson is a racist because he says he has a black adopted son, and they're telling you he doesn't. Did you hear about this, guys? Did you hear that the argument against Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, the horrible, terrible reason why you can't support Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives, the reason why he's an evil Republican, is because the left has decided that his adopted son doesn't exist. They have depersoned and dehumanized and removed the existence of this man's son. I want you to think about that for a second. I hope someone clips this and sends this around on Twitter and TikTok and all that. The Democrats dehumanized and removed the existence of a human being simply because of politics. Just because that young man, Mike Johnson's son, is black, he can't exist. It's kind of like Joe Biden when he said, oh, if you ain't black if you don't vote for Joe Biden, if you don't vote Democrat. Yeah, that's what they're doing to Mike Johnson's adopted son. By the way, we know for a fact this son exists. This has not been an issue in 8 years of Mike Johnson being in the House of Representatives. But I can go to NPR in 2020 when he was talking about his son, and the Democrats had no problem. No one said his son doesn't exist. In 2019, and this will be in the description, I have articles from 2019. Where is it? Give me a second. Where is Mike Johnson's son? I'm just looking at my sources here. Where is it? Newsweek. Newsweek 2019 mentions that in 2020, PBS had an interview with Mike Johnson as he quotes his son. No one had a problem with that. No one said his son didn't exist. It was okay for a Republican to have an adopted black son. And the Intelligencer, the New York magazine, is quoted talking about Mike Johnson and his argument against reparations, which included his conversation, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, and his conversation with his adopted son. This is an article that comes from the New York magazine, The Intelligencer, June 19th of 2019. The left was upset that Mike Johnson did not support reparations. They had no problem with the fact that he had a black son. So when you hear the argument today in 2023 coming from the left saying that Mike Johnson has a fake son, this is how far they will go. They will eliminate the existence of anyone that does not support what they believe. Mike Johnson can't have a black son because that would mean a Republican had a black son. But the Republicans are supposed to be racist and evil. He can't have a black son. Conservatives can't have black kids. You can't be conservative and be black according to the progressive left. So that means that kid must not exist. He must not exist. Oh, he doesn't take photos. He doesn't do articles and quotes. Do you see the way that the news media treats Donald Trump's kids? Do you see the way the news media treats conservatives? Why in the hell would you do that to your kids? It's hard enough to be a politician or someone who does political commentary and get attacked from the left as is. Why would you want to do that to your kids, especially if your kids don't want to be involved in politics? They don't want to be David Hogg. They don't want to be Greta Thunberg in every single headline, attacked for everything they say, especially when they say something stupid. So Mike Johnson's son doesn't want to be a headline because he is a black conservative, or at the very least, the son of a conservative, and he is black. So he doesn't want to be part of those absolutely racist headlines. Look how they treat Larry Sharp and also Larry Elder. Remember Larry Elder? The LA Times, front page, said that Larry Elder is the face of white supremacy. Larry Elder is darker than I am. He is black. And yet, the left said he is a white supremacist. Can you imagine what they would say about Mike Johnson's son? Just because his dad happens to be Speaker of the House. This is evil. It's the same kind of evil that says be pro-Hamas, support genocide, support terrorism, support the far left. Obey and do what they say. You can't have a certain religion. You can't have political ideas. You can't even be related to people with an ideology that isn't progressive. They want to dehumanize you. They want to remove your existence. This young man can't exist simply because the progressives don't like it. And that's why you should be upset with Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. Your problem for Speaker of the House should be that he has a son who doesn't want to be a headline like Greta Thunberg or David Hogg. Does that make sense to anyone? Let me look at the comments here. I want to hear what people have to say about that. I really do. User has been banned mentions that Cenk Uygur is running for president and that it's on the list of stupid things. I agree with you, but it's a joke. It's the only reason why Cenk Uygur is trying to run for president, quote unquote, is because he needs to try and make the Young Turks relevant. He is trying to save money. This is his advertising campaign. He's trying to justify the money that he gets from big news media business, from the far left. He's trying to keep his business alive and make himself relevant at a time where he's not relevant. No one cares about the Young Turks. No one quotes the Young Turks. Fewer and fewer people are watching them because they're progressive nut jobs. And so he's trying to be relevant. And this is his gimmick, running for president. No one's going to vote for him. It's like when he ran for Congress. No one voted for him. No one takes him as a serious politician. He's going nowhere. Users Band also goes on to say that what they're doing to Mike Johnson's son is normal. They likely think he used that son as labor, God forbid, he had a chore around the house or two. Yeah, they probably would say that, no, oh my God, he has a black son, and the black son is mowing the lawn. Oh my God, it's slave labor. Mike Johnson's black son is mowing the lawn. That has to be, it's slavery. Slavery. The Republicans are bringing back slavery. How can you have a black son mow the lawn in front of the family house? Oh, that is slavery. You can hear them say that. I can hear the progressives saying that. They could see that and go, oh my God, this kid, he's washing the family car. Oh no, this is got to be slavery. Look at the chores. The kid is doing dishes in the house. He is black in a conservative household. That means slavery. Oh, the Republicans are bringing back slavery again because the black kid has a chore. Seriously. I mean, this is what the progressives are, that's what they're doing right now. It is that extreme. It is that stupid on its face. Especially when we have seen year after year. Again, in 2019, the left, in having a conversation about reparations, had no problem with the fact that Mike Johnson's son was black. They didn't argue that. They are arguing about they didn't like his opinion about reparations, but they didn't deny the existence. But now that Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House, suddenly they forgot that in 2019, in 2020, in all of the elections that Mike Johnson has gone through, that they had no problem with his son being black until someone might pay attention. Oh my God, black people in America might find out that a Speaker of the House has a black son. Therefore, that son might, we don't even know if he is, he might, just maybe, be a conservative. That black kid was raised in a conservative Republican house. Black people were raised in a black conservative house. He was a middle-class kid. Oh my God, black people can't know that. You can't tell black people in America that a kid, like Dr. Dre, can be raised middle class, that they might have a family with values, with a mom and a dad, that they might, just might, be raised with conservative values and not turn into a gangbanger. Oh my God, the world is ending. We have to denounce this and eliminate this kid. I really feel bad for him. I really feel bad for Mike Johnson's son, because he doesn't deserve this. Mike Johnson's son doesn't want to be the center of attention. And the Democrats are trying to eliminate his existence. That's evil. That is on the same par. That is the same kind of thing that you hear from Hamas when it comes to talking about someone who is Jewish. They want to remove their existence. This is why it's so easy for the far left, the Democratic Socialists of America, the Black Lives Matter movement in Chicago, the Antifa. Why is it so easy for them to commit acts of violence and to support genocide and terrorism? Because look at what they do on just regular basic politics. Black son, he can't exist. He no longer exists. Why? Because his dad got a promotion. His dad got a promotion at work, so his son can no longer exist. He's not a human being. They have eliminated him. They have decided to take away his blackness, just like Joe Biden did in 2020. When he was talking to Charlemagne, they're going to take away your blackness. You're no longer a human being. You're no longer black. You do not exist. Why? Because they said so. And if you don't exist, well, how can they commit genocide against you? How can they commit terrorism against you if you don't exist? If you're not a person, if you're not real? And that's why Hamas is getting support from the far left. Because they already don't count people as existing, as being real. Mike Johnson's son doesn't exist, neither do the Jews in Israel. Therefore, you cannot commit genocide against them. That is the ideology coming from Hamas. That is the ideology coming from the Democratic Socialists of America. That's the ideology coming from BLM. That's the ideology coming from Iran. If there is anyone who is a Democrat, a progressive, member of Antifa, Democratic Socialists of America, if there is a member of elected office that would like to tell me, Mike, you are wrong, let's have that conversation. I will absolutely go jump all the hoops I need to make sure that we can have a live conversation where we can have this discussion. Absolutely. Because it is clear, it is crystal clear that Bill Maher, you know what, like a broken clock, he sometimes gets things right. Yes, colleges are indoctrinating our kids. They are saying that if you do not believe what they approve, then you are the bad guy. And if you are the bad guy, you don't exist. You're not a human being. And that they can do whatever they want to you because your very existence is a microaggression, and that means violence, and therefore they can react any way they want. This is the logic of the left. It's not my logic. I don't agree with it. I think it's absolutely absurd. I think it is vile and evil. But this is the logic they use to allow them to support terrorism like with Hamas. This is what the logic they use to allow terrorism like Antifa, like the autonomous zones that we have seen across America, whether that's the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, otherwise known as the Chaz, where a 16-year-old child was killed, or whether it's the Defenders of the Atlanta Forest, where, again, someone was killed, and more importantly, they were trying to attack the city of Atlanta to force them to obey. Yeah, the left is consistent in this. If you don't believe what they believe, you aren't human, and they are justified in any evil act against you. That's why they support Hamas. That's why they support autonomous zones. That's why they support all of the violence that they support, like with Antifa. If there is anyone on the left that would like to dispute that, I am happy to have that argument with you. And this is why I'm so upset. Because we're hearing people like Bill Maher, who knows this is all about indoctrination. He just admitted it. He admitted this is about indoctrination. And then he goes and supports that indoctrination in the very next breath. Oh yeah, don't go to college. Don't go to the Ivy Leagues. They're going to indoctrinate you. By the way, if you're a Republican, you're evil. If you're a Republican, your kids are not human. This is the message that they are putting out. We got to call this kind of stuff out, folks, because I think it's evil. I really, really do. This is evil when we see these things happen. It's also evil that we are currently allowing illegal immigration in the way that we are. Besides the fact that about 2.4 to 2.7 illegal aliens that we know of entered the United States. Besides the fact that at least 169 known or suspected terrorists that we know of entered the United States. Just in this last year. We're not talking about over the last decade, in the last year under the Biden-Harris administration. But remember, under the Biden-Harris administration, what have we seen? We had 17,000 Haitians decide that it was better to live under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, than to live in Haiti. Currently, by the way, 12,000 of those illegal aliens were allowed to enter the United States. Broke our law, Biden let them in. Right now, according to the New York Post, October 28th, 4:13 p.m., there are 200 illegal aliens In New York City, they're over by the BQE, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, and they have set up their own mini city. We are not only allowing a massive wave of illegal aliens to enter into the United States, but we are now allowing them to create their own communities, their own centers, zones, mini cities, if you would like, where they are creating. They have their own businesses, they have their own storefronts, they're creating their own homes and living conditions. Are they illegal? Absolutely. Are they homeless? Mostly. And yet, they are putting together businesses and communities and living together. According to the article from the New York Post from yesterday, they have images of these guys having open-air barber shops. They have some of these illegal aliens selling counterfeit Nike sneakers. I got to ask you, you're an illegal alien and you're charging $15 per haircut. The other illegal aliens that are coming to you, where do they get the money from? You're selling illegal sneakers, knockoff versions of Nike sneakers, okay? Bootleg sneakers. Where did you get the bootleg sneakers from? Where did you get the supply that you are selling? They have these knockoff businesses selling used or knockoff or imitation items. Where did you get that from? Where did the money come from that? And this is happening in the open air and in Brooklyn, Queens. The police are seeing this. They're not shut down. Eric Adams, the practical progressive, has nothing to say about the fact that they're doing business, that they're living their lives, they're living out in the open. He lets it happen. Why? Because they're illegal aliens. And, illegal aliens might vote Democrat, so we got to leave them alone. We have to figure a way to put those illegal aliens in a 4-star hotel paid for by taxpayers. Not, by the way, citizens, you're out of luck. If you're a mom, if you're a family and you've fallen on bad times, well, you're out of luck. You get kicked out of the shelter. You get kicked out of the hotel. You get kicked off of government help so that illegal alien who broke into America, who have violated our laws, so that they can get help. This is what's happening in America right now. This is what's happening. And every time that we mention these absolute facts, whether it's with Bill Maher, what's happening with Speaker Mike Johnson, when we talk about what's happening with illegal aliens in New York City or down in Arizona, when we're talking about what's happening with Democratic Socialists of America, the lack of policies by the Biden-Harris administration, when we talk about these things, what happens? Suppression and censorship. They want to silence you. You're not supposed to have an opinion about this. Even if you don't agree with me, you can't find out about this to have this discussion. They want you silenced. This is about you. They don't like you. They want you to be punished. You have to obey. You have no choice. And it's just getting worse and worse. Every time that we look at it, when we look at what's happening with the illegal aliens in New York City, when we see what's happening in Chicago, when we see what's happening in Florida, in Arizona, in Texas, in California, it's getting worse. But every time we talk about it, the person who says something, you're the bad guy. You're not supposed to talk about that. It's just like you're not supposed to talk about any other candidate other than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the choice for Democrats. You don't have another choice. There is no other voice. There is no other candidate. It's just Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and they're running, and they're going to win, according to the left. That's the message. That is the approved message. Move On already said on June 27th to every Senate Democrat, you can't talk about anyone except Joe Biden. Otherwise, they will take away your re-election funding. That's a fact. We know that dinner happened, that threat was made by Move On against United States senators. We know that's a fact. It was well reported by Politico. And now we know that even today, according to CNN itself, you're seeing CNN say to Democrats, stop talking about anyone except Biden. The article actually says top Democrats plead with the party, plead with Americans. Stop looking for a Biden alternative. Biden is not accepted by the American people. 62% of Democrats don't want Biden to run in 2024. His own party rejects him overwhelmingly. More than a majority do not think he is doing a good job and do not want him in 2024. And the leadership of the Democratic Party, taking a cue from the Democratic Socialists of America, have said, you don't get a choice. Obey. Just do what we say. And they are actively censoring anyone else. What did RFK do in the last week? RFK, a Democrat, has to run as an independent because Democrats will not let him speak. And then I have to ask you, okay, so where's the news coverage? He's rich. He's well respected as a Democrat. He's well known as a Democrat. When was the last time you heard about coverage of RFK? Probably was on the day that he announced he was going to run independent, and then the news media shut him down. They have censored him. They have suppressed him. You don't hear anything about RFK. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I don't care that RFK is or isn't in the race. I think he's an isolationist. I don't think he's a good choice. But he should be heard. You should know that he's had meetings, that he's been out on the campaign trail across America. No, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, name the major news station, they have shut him down. You can't talk about him. And now we hear Democrats saying, you can't talk about anyone except Biden and Harris, and you have to say that they are the choice for 2024. This is insulting. This is in America where we have a First Amendment. We're supposed to be able to have a conversation about politics. You can't. You can't. They are trying to silence all of these students. They're trying to silence students and the general public. You're not supposed to have a conversation. You're only supposed to obey, and you're only supposed to think what they want you to think. It's Joe Biden or no one at all, because, Republicans are evil. MAGA's evil. Make America great is evil. How dare you want to make America great? Why would you want your home to be great? You are an evil fascist. Therefore, the only answer is support Hamas, support global terrorism, support genocide. Does that make sense? This is the leap that the left wants you to make. This is the logic that they are trying to indoctrinate into school students all across America. It's really, really insane. And I understand. It's not like the right is perfect. I mean, there's an article from the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, an editorial, and they highlight that Ron DeSantis has gone too far. Because like with Joe Biden, just like with Move On, just like with the left saying, you can't have another voice, you can't have another opinion, Ron DeSantis has done the same thing in colleges down in Florida. Now, let's be very clear. We agree with the Sun-Sentinel that the organization, which is called the Students for Justice in Palestine, also known as the SJP, they are vile. We denounce them. They are anti-Semitic. They are supporting terrorism. They are supporting genocide. They are evil and vile people. That organization is evil and vile. And we denounce them. And we denounce their message and their ideology. But, just like the Sun-Sentinel, we agree. That doesn't mean that they don't get to have a voice. That doesn't mean that Ron DeSantis gets to shut them down. But that's what our politics have come to. That we see people like Ron DeSantis doing the same thing that Joe Biden's doing, the same thing that MoveOn.org is doing, the same thing that Bill Maher is doing, the same thing that we are seeing on the far left. And I understand, even once for someone to say, like Ron DeSantis has done, and say, you don't have a right to speak because I don't like what you're saying, needs to be called out, and we have to say that that is wrong. Ron DeSantis is wrong for saying to the SJP that they can't support terrorism. Well, that they cannot say that it is. They're supporting terrorism, they're supporting genocide. It's vile, it's disgusting, it's evil. And I do not agree with that. I denounce that completely. But I believe in the First Amendment. If the SJP, if students in Florida want to support terrorism, they want to support genocide, I'd rather know. It's kind of like with racism. I'd rather know someone is a racist than have them hide it and do it behind my back. I'd rather know that the students for justice in Palestine are a bunch of genocidal terrorists, and I'd rather know that they support Hamas to the extent that they would kill people. I want to know that than have them in the shadows doing God only knows what against God only knows who. I think daylight is exactly what they need, that we need to have this conversation and say that the SJP are vile and disgusting, and what they stand for is repugnant. And I think Ron DeSantis is wrong by saying they don't get a First Amendment right to be able to speak. He should absolutely say they are repugnant. But he shouldn't be like Joe Biden. He shouldn't be like Democrats. He shouldn't be like the Democratic Socialists of America or Antifa or the defenders of the Atlanta forest and the other autonomous zones and say you can't speak about it. I disagree. And I think we need to hold them accountable so that they don't do things like we see with Ilhan Omar, like we see with Rashida Tlaib, where they refuse to answer questions or they try and run away from the questions that are being asked. That they try and say, well, it's okay. It's okay if I'm evil because I think someone else is evil. No, that doesn't justify it. It doesn't at all. Let me see here. Hey, Grace. I just see your comments. Grace said, only RFK coverage I hear is on social media. Yeah, and that's reduced. Grace says, I also signed up for his messages via text, so I hear when he is in town. Well, most people don't have that access, and most people don't know that RFK is running in the race anymore because the left, working with the White House, have suppressed him. And that's the evil of what the White House is doing right now. User has been banned says, it's kind of sad how we have such bad candidates. And I agree with you. And I think when we have candidates that even some think are good, like Ron DeSantis, and there are, 20% of people believe that Ron DeSantis is a decent candidate. Fantastic. He's governor of Florida. People do support him. And we have to call him out and say, just like I would on the left, and as I have on the left, I will call him out on the right, and I will call him out for saying, no, you cannot deny someone their First Amendment right. If you want to call out what they are doing as vile and disgusting and evil, I'm all for it because I agree. But that doesn't mean you silence them. That's the kind of thing I expect to see from Kathy Hochul. That's the kind of thing that Gretchen Whitmer has done in Michigan. That's the kind of thing that Gavin Newsom has done in California. That's what we see from Joe Biden, from the New York Times, from CNN, MSNBC, from the Democratic Socialists of America. And that is not something we need to bring into the Republican Party or into conservative mindsets. We don't need to say it's okay to shut down voices. Hold them accountable. Don't shut them down. I say the same thing about the Harvard students. 34 student unions, student organizations at Harvard said that they believe in genocide and terrorism. And now, of course, Harvard says, well, you shouldn't hold that against them. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I absolutely should be able to. And yes, it is absolutely right to hold against the Harvard students, just like at Columbia, same thing at Tufts University, at Cooper Union, Binghamton University. Yes, I will hold your acts of racism and intolerance and genocide. I will hold that against you. Absolutely. But you can say it, and please do say it, so that I know that you, Antifa, you, the progressive leaders of tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, Indivisible New York, the Working Families Party, the Democratic Socialists of America, whatever the various names you guys like to use to hide who you are, I want you to say in your own voices that you love this kind of evil, so that now I know how to deal with you. So that I can say, here are all these groups. They're all evil, vile, disgusting, and they support things that no fair-minded human being would ever agree with. So I think Ron DeSantis was wrong. Grace says, I know only mainstream media mentions RFK when they want to yell, anti-vaxxer. Yeah, they love to say that. They love to try and, oh my God, anti-vax. Did you see the article from CNN this week that if you have been taking the vaccine, you may, it is a side effect now, that you may be at higher chance of getting a stroke. Just came out, CNN article. Okay? And that'll be in the description. The link will be in the description. That is a fact. Oh, but anti-vaxxer, you must be a bad person. It's perfect. It can do no harm. It is perfect for you, except the science actually says that is a lie. That Joe Biden lied to your face. That the people pushing the vaccine lied to your face when they told you you would not get sick, that you couldn't die, and that you couldn't transmit this. Those were all lies. But we're the bad guys for pointing out that there are side effects, like every other man-made drug ever created. And RFK is a bad guy because he points it out too. See, that's the problem. Grace goes on to say, Gavin Newsom, I think, is running now, even if he he waits until 2028 to throw his name. Gavin Newsom he's going around trying to get support. He's doing the same thing that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing. They are getting support for their races in 2028. And those are going to be two of the Democrats who are going to be running for presidency in 2028. They can't win the race in 2024. They can't get the money in 2024, but they want to be some of the front runners in terms of money, in terms of support in 2028. That's why within the last 2 years, we keep seeing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been traveling down to Florida trying to get the supporters that used to be for Kirsten Gillibrand and the Democratic Party. Everyone who's left New York that went to Florida, she's gone to Florida after them to get their money for her race in 2028. So yeah, Gavin Newsom is doing the same thing. That's why he's in China right now. Gavin Newsom is in China right now, not because he's going to suddenly have a better international policy for the United States than the United States government already has. He has no power to make international policy. He has no power to make any agreements. He's in China to get money. He's trying to get himself a slice of the same pie of the deal that Joe Biden has gotten for the for the Biden family. That's why you see him in China right now. I truly believe that, because he can't make policy for the United States. That's not going to happen. So why is he in China? I believe it's so that he can get loans, so that he can have donations for 2028. That's what I believe is happening. Someone may say, Mike, you're wrong. That's what I think. Grace says, Harvard is a joke. Bill Maher went to Cornell. I know he went to an Ivy. I don't remember which one he went to. And he said, if you go to college, go to a state school. Well, he also said, rather than going into college, why not have a trade? Or at least I'm saying trades are much more necessary, and you'll make more money in a trade, and it'll cost you less in loans if you go to a trade. Become a carpenter, an electrician, a machinist. America desperately needs that. Do that instead. You'll do better. You'll have less pressure and you'll be less indoctrinated. Bill Maher, I do not like him, but sometimes, like a broken clock, sometimes he's telling the truth and he's right. Sometimes. Very rarely. So I brought up the negatives, the recent negatives going on with Ron DeSantis. What's going on with the Biden-Harris administration? What's going on with Democrats? And they're ever growing. Did you know there are over 21 Democrats that are running for president right now? And I mean, that includes people like RFK and the new guy, Dean Phillips, who are somewhat big names, and Marianne Williamson, who really isn't a choice, but she's out there nationally as well. So there's another 20 people besides them that are running. Democrats are as confused as any other party in America at this moment. And even more so because, unlike the other parties, literally almost 2/3 of Democrats don't want the guy they have. So I think that's even worse. That's my opinion. You may disagree. But since we're talking about elections, we cannot leave out the fact that I believe it was, and I want to get my dates correct here. Where is it? Bear with me. We said, where is it? There. So back on May 31st, you may or may not recall, on May 31st, we looked at every single one of the candidates at that time known that were running for either Republican or Democratic nomination for 2024 election. And we evaluated every single candidate based on their ability to do international policy, all of their platforms, where they all stood, who are the strongest candidates based on just their foreign policy experience and plans. That was May 31st, 2023. Nobody in the media were talking about international politics. Nobody was ranking any of the candidates based on their political acumen, their experience with international policy. Well, since that time, besides what we see in Afghanistan, besides what's happening in the Ukraine, besides the Americans being abandoned in Sudan, well, we now have what's happening in the Middle East as we speak and what's going on in China. And suddenly, because everyone is focused on the Middle East, because everyone's focused on Iran and Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis out of Yemen, which is basically saying Iran 3 different ways. Since everyone is focused on that, we've seen that the Republican candidates have changed their rankings. Now, mind you, Biden has sank even lower and has become even less trusted than he was before for the very same reason, because he and Kamala have no plan. But we have seen that there has been a change in the Republican candidates, the nominees, and we've seen that Vivek Ramaswamy, like we initially expected, has dropped. He's not in the lead to be vice president. We've seen that Mike Pence is now no longer in the race. Not a shock. If you look back at our coverage of the first Republican debate of 2023, you will see that during that debate and immediately afterwards, we told everyone, Mike Pence is going to be out of this race in November. You can quote us. You can go back, look at our coverage. We told everyone, in November, Mike Pence is going to be out of this race. He is going to lose. He is not a candidate. He is not a choice. The thing we got wrong is we also believed that Chris Christie would be gone by now. And I do not understand how Chris Christie is still in this race. I do not understand how Chris Christie that anyone considers him relevant. And if it weren't for the fact that he has some 15% of all of his donations are coming from Democrats who are just looking for Chris Christie to scream, "I hate Trump," I don't think Chris Christie would be in this race. Literally, the only reason why anyone is supporting Chris Christie is to hear him say Trump is a bad guy Trump, orange man bad, from the right. That's it. Chris Christie is the Democrat. He is a Democrat in Republican clothing, there to say orange man bad. That's it. That's what he's getting funded for. He's not politically relevant. He's not got any support. He has no chance in hell. Even if Trump wasn't around tomorrow, for whatever reason, gets arrested, had a heart attack, whatever the reason, if Trump no longer existed, Chris Christie still would lose the Republican nomination for the 2024 election. He is irrelevant. So we thought he would be the first one out, obviously. He has the worst international politics position. His international policy, horrible. We ranked him terribly. But that being said, that was March 31st. That was after the Republican first debate. Chris Christie is still here. But Mike Pence is not. We were correct in that. He fell, his star, barely having a star, his name recognition did not carry him through, and he has stopped getting money, he stopped getting support, and he bailed out. Although he hasn't given his support the 3%, 2-3% of Republicans that were following Mike Pence. He hasn't said, oh, they're going to now support someone else. He hasn't endorsed anyone else, which is kind of funny because I think Mike Pence's endorsement is actually a negative, not a positive. I don't think anyone wants the supporters of Mike Pence. I don't think that he has any leverage out there. But he's the first one out. Chris Christie is shortly to follow. Perhaps we may be wrong. But I'd like to say that Tim Scott's going to make it into January, and that he still has a chance at being vice president. And quite honestly, I think the choice for vice president at this second is going to be between Senator Tim Scott and Kari Lake. Tim Scott has more experience, and Tim Scott has better connections in Congress, and he's black. You know, that mysterious thing that doesn't seem to exist, that we keep getting told by CNN and the mainstream media doesn't exist. You cannot be a conservative, you cannot be Republican and be black. You just think of Mike Johnson's son. Can't exist. Has to be a non-entity. Well, Senator Tim Scott does exist, and he does have experience, and he is reasonable. He's a pretty damn good Republican, if a bit of an establishment. But he is a good choice for vice president because of all of the factors I've listed. Kari Lake, I believe, is more likely than Nikki Haley to be vice president. Because, one, Trump is going to be the nominee. That's not changed. He's blown away everyone. The man's at 50-60% support by Republicans. He's talked about every day. He gets free media on every news media organization since the last 7 years. He's not going anywhere. Unless Trump becomes incredibly ill, unless he were to suddenly die, or if he were to actually be thrown in jail for a federal offense that would disqualify him, none of those conditions are likely to exist at this moment. Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. That's a fact. So everybody is just going for second place. Obviously, Ron DeSantis wants to replace Trump. Ron DeSantis can't do it. He's not good enough. And as we know, as we just mentioned, he has issues. Kind of like when he's trying to take away someone's First Amendment rights, even if they are violent and disgusting people, he's still trying to take away their First Amendment rights, which gives a lot of people massive pauses with him, saying, if you're willing to do that, it's kind of like the college students being willing to support genocide. You got issues. So Ron DeSantis is out. He's not going to be VP. Mike Pence has dropped out. Tim Scott could be. Carrie Lake could be. She supports Trump. She's been a consistent supporter of President Trump. She's had a good showing in the West. In the West Coast, she is decently known. She has strong support in Arizona and the Midwest. She's made the case and she's stood unbowing in the face of pressure to have her censored, to have her suppressed, to try and tell her that she was wrong. She's won several cases in court. She's lost a couple of cases in court. She's a fighter, and she's a decent politician, and she's a woman. And that's a very big category. So we think that Carrie Lake is probably about tied with Tim Scott for the vice presidency, in my opinion. Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't have enough experience. That has been shown in the second Republican debate. It has been shown in his comments afterwards talking about international politics. It's not that he's a dumb man. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he's not capable. I'm saying he doesn't have enough experience to be vice president. And he needs to gain that experience. And I think everyone has recognized that. He is energetic. He is smart. He does seem to have strong Republican or conservative principles. But he needs experience. Which is why I continue to say he's going to get a cabinet position, maybe Secretary of Labor, something of that nature, where he's going to be getting experience in dealing with government, which would give him the opportunity to run in 2028. And in 2028, Vivek Ramaswamy, given the cabinet position, would be more of a realistic challenger for the presidency. So Vivek's gone. That leaves us essentially one other person, Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is really a great candidate. I would have loved her as vice president, but she doesn't want to be vice president. She wants to be president. She's often not a supporter at all of Donald Trump. She has tried to do what Ron DeSantis has done in trying to replace him, to say that she could do it better. She has a lot of international experience. In fact, of all the Republicans that are running, Nikki Haley is the only other person besides Donald Trump that have enough experience, that have actually had international experience, have done the job, and know what's going on around the world, and knowing the impact that America has on the rest of the world. And of course, she's a woman. And because of what's happening with Iran, what's happening in the Middle East, and now the way that people are changing the way they look at China and Taiwan, looking at Ukraine and Russia, the Americans are finally starting to notice that, yeah, international politics is as vital as domestic policy for our president, that we need someone who's strong internationally as well as domestically, because just promises for one or the other is not enough. It doesn't work. And I think the rest of the world is recognizing that having a president who is only after the next election is not a positive. That will only result in bad things. And someone who doesn't have a defined international policy is a detriment to America and gives less trust around the world, which creates more militarism, more rogue nations, more terrorism in the world. So again, that leaves us Nikki Haley. She would be a great vice president because of her experience. And we said that back in May 31st of this year, when we were evaluating all of the candidates, Democrats and Republicans, on their international international policy positions. And Nikki Haley was second place. She was right behind Donald Trump. Check it out. It's in writing. I said it then, and I'm being proven correct today, October 29th. I'm being proven correct what I said in May. So 5 months later, I'm right. But she's not going to win. She's not going to replace Donald Trump for president, and she is not going to get vice president based on the things she has said. In fact, just this week, Donald Trump was insulting her, guaranteeing and saying he would not support her. So, as much as you are hearing from the news media today in the wake of Mike Pence being removed, in the wake of the fact that Ron DeSantis is trying to strip away people's First Amendment rights, in the wake of the fact that money is switching hands quickly and international policy is an emphasis, Nikki Haley is not going to win. She may replace Ron DeSantis as the second place choice, but she won't be VP. She's not going to be the main ticket, and she's not going to be VP. She is not going to be the person who breaks through the glass ceiling for Republican women. If anyone's going to do that, it's Carrie Lake. I've said it publicly. I'm saying it right now live. I'm saying it on October 29th, 2023. Just as I said that Nikki Haley was the second best choice in terms of international policy. Absolutely. And I still maintain that to the second. She will not be president. She will not get the VP nod. It will either be Tim Scott or it will be Carrie Lake. And at this moment, as much as I like Tim Scott as VP, I think Carrie Lake gets the nod because votes from women are more important than votes from blacks for the Republicans at this time. I truly believe that. Grace says, yeah, she likes Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott as well. And, according to the far left, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas doesn't exist as a black man either. He's not black. You can't be black and be conservative, so you're something else. They tell me that all the time. You may be skin folk, but you're not kinfolk. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It's useless. It's a dumb statement. It's meant to get emotions going. Oh my God, you can't say that about me. I don't care if you say that about me. It means nothing. It's a meaningless statement. Because black people aren't monolithic. You don't get to say, you don't get to choose my blackness or that of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas or Senator Tim Scott or anyone else. You don't get to make that decision. You don't. But, so I'm giving you my view. Now, I'd be happy to hear. Does anyone think I am wrong? In fact, let me type that out here. Oops, come on. So my first thing I would say is, does anyone disagree with me that Nikki Haley is getting a boost due to the Hamas-Israel war? That would be the first thing. The same thing I'd ask is, does anyone think that Trump would pick Nikki Haley over Carrie Lake for VP? I typed it. Sorry, typos there. And I'm saying that it's going to be Lake. If it has to be a woman, it would be Carrie Lake. And I'm happy to see this. And so if anyone is watching this after the show, if you're watching it after the live stream, you can still respond. And I'd be happy to see it in the comments. Just tell me in the comments and say, you think it would be, do you think it's Carrie Lake? Do you think it would be Nikki Haley? Do you think there's a different woman in Republican politics that would be a better choice for VP? Especially that would need, it is an absolute requirement that, or at least a benefit, if they have international policy experience. Do you think Tim Scott is a better choice than either of those ladies? I personally am absolutely sure that according to what Trump has been saying in recent news announcements, according to what Nikki Haley has said publicly about President Trump, there is no way in hell that she's going to get the VP nod. Grace says, no, I don't think that Nikki Haley is getting a boost. Well, I disagree, Grace. To be sure, currently there are several polls that are putting Nikki Haley, she's definitely getting a boost of late. Where is it? I tell you, it's hard when I only have one screen to look at. I apologize, folks. So currently, Nikki Haley is, according to Real Clear Politics, at this moment, she has 8.3% of the total Republican support. Trump is at 59.1%. Ron DeSantis at the moment is at 12.6%. He has been falling consistently for a while. Nikki Haley, 8.3% of Republicans. Vivek Ramaswamy, 4.5%. Mike Pence sort of is at 3.5%. And Tim Scott is at 1.6%. Now, as I said, Ramaswamy, after the first debate, had soared. He actually hit double digits. He got as high as about 11% in a couple of the polls that were out there. And then he has trailed back down as he just doesn't have enough experience, though he has a lot of energy. And we have seen that Ron DeSantis, who had started roughly in the 20 percentile, I think he was as high as 24% at one point, 30%, when the first questions about 2024 were coming up. And he has ever since dropped, and most recently he's been around, well, where he is right now, 10, 12, 11 percentile and falling. So he's falling out of favor. But consistently, Nikki Haley, who started off at about 1% support, has been consistently growing her support and is now currently at 8%, almost into the, depending on the poll, in the double digits. And it's kind of interesting because, Grace, the increase in attention towards Nikki Haley has coincided very much with the increase in problems overseas, the importance of having international policy, with the emergence of Americans being abandoned in Sudan, with the threats coming from China versus Taiwan, from the Middle East, from Ukraine, and now with what we see with Hamas versus Israel, with Hezbollah, with elements of Iran in Syria, in Iraq, attacking the United States, trying to get into a fight with us there, with the threats from Iran to attack Americans on American soil through terrorism. I think she's gotten a big boost. Now, does that mean that's enough? No. But I think she's getting, I want to be fair, she is getting a boost for those specific reasons. If we didn't see Iran, Hamas, if we didn't have the threats that are going on right now, I don't think she'd get the boost she has gotten. Grace goes on to say, no, Trump will not pick Haley because of her fairly harsh criticisms of Trump. I agree with you. I think that has kicked her out of the running. And I think Trump has recently responded to that and said, he doesn't like her because of her harsh statements against him and the way that he has operated international politics in the past. So I think she's out. So I think we agree there. Grace goes on to say, I would take Nikki over any Democrat, but she's not my favorite Republican. Well, I understand that. I don't think there's any Democrat in the field, including RFK, that I would support. Marianne Williamson wants to hug everybody. RFK wants to stick his head in the sand and turn America into an isolationist nation. Joe Biden has no idea what he's doing. He's running us into the worst option every single time. Kamala Harris is the only person who is less well-liked than Joe Biden, both internationally and nationally. So, there's no win on any of the Democrats. But I think Tim Scott is a far better choice, far better pairing with Donald Trump than Kari Lake. The black vote, I think, is essential. And I think Donald Trump's going to get the vote of women no matter what. I think that's going to happen. But I could be wrong. And I know there's a lot of Republicans that are saying, no, Kari Lake is essential because the vote of women is essential. And she helps Donald Trump with that vote group. Hey, John. John, good to see you. John says, are you going to do a Godzilla tier list for president like I did back in 2020? For those who don't remember, I basically turned every one of the candidates into a kaiju, what would be their kaiju equivalent, and then ranked them as kaiju against each other. So it was kind of funny. I don't know. I might do that, John. I don't know. If enough people ask, yes, I will. John also says, Kari Lake has tons of issues like giving money to Obama. I think questions about her conservative streak, there's some questions about her as a conservative at times. Well, again, that's why I like Tim Scott better. But I do hear the argument, and I have heard more and more people saying that if it's going to be a woman, and since it's not going to be Nikki Haley, it has to be Kari Lake. Grace says, I think Trump and Scott may actually like each other, or at least there is no bad blood between them. And as far as I know, there is no bad blood between them. I don't think they're 100% on the same page, but they're more closely aligned, and there's less bad blood. Same thing, again, Kari Lake, no bad blood, but she has other issues. And they all do. But I think that's the best choice. And considering where we are as a nation, considering the threat to our nation in terms of domestic policy, in terms of an open border that is leading to Iran being able to threaten American citizens, and that is trying to affect international policy, that is trying to allow for the genocide of a group of people. Think about it. Iran is saying if America stops Hamas and Iran from committing genocide, that they're going to attack the United States directly through terrorism, through an open border. If you remove the open border, the threat of Iran to American citizens in America is almost evaporated. It almost goes away. The only reason why Iran can threaten American citizens and try and use that as a bargaining chip to kill people in Israel is because Joe Biden has an open border. Because Democrats, progressives, believe in open borders. It is only because of the progressive ideology of open borders and not having the wall is the only reason why Iran can threaten American citizens directly. It's kind of scary when you think about that. How this is connected. How that policy has now made international, that domestic policy of having a border has turned into an international policy of threats against American citizens. This is why International politics is so important. John says, if it's going to be a woman, I see Elise Stefanik or Kristi Noem more likely. Kerry Lake appeal outside of Arizona is weak. Grace mentions that Senator Tim Scott, is an establishment guy, but I think Trump needs an establishment guy. Oh, absolutely. Tim Scott is an establishment guy. I did say that earlier. I've said it every time I've talked about him. He is an establishment guy. And Trump does need someone that can talk to the establishment for him. That's the reason why Mike Pence was his vice president as well. Although Mike Pence wasn't effective at it, I think you see Tim Scott is more respected and has a better connection, and so he would do a better job of it. But that's exactly what you need. Trump needs that bridge towards the establishment. And that when I say establishment, I mean the left and the right. Establishment Democrats as well as establishment Republicans. You need that bridge, and that's what Tim Scott can provide. As for Kristi Noem, not enough Americans know who she is, and it's kind of late into the process. Could they be brought up to speed? Sure. Is she as good? Nikki Haley is still a better candidate, but possibly. In terms of Elise Stefanik, no way. Mind you, I have met Elise. I remember when Elise was running for office for the first time. This was back in 2013 when I was on the campaign trail for the New York 22nd District. And I met Elise when she was running for the New York 21. And we were out in, what is that, Herkimer. We were in Herkimer County. And so we were going out and speaking to the same group of Republicans. And it was very interesting. So I've met her. I've talked with her. I think she's a decent Republican candidate. She doesn't have the the domestic U.S. She doesn't have enough name recognition. She isn't recognized as much as any of the other ladies we've talked about. And she doesn't have as much international presence either as compared to the people we've talked about. Elise is, and I don't think Elise is ready for a national election. I don't think she's prepared in terms of her mindset, her background. I don't think she's set. I could be wrong. Not that she's a bad candidate, not that she's a bad politician. I just don't think she's prepared. And I think there are people who are better than her. But that's me. Yeah, Tim Scott is an excellent, Grace says, Tim Scott is an excellent politician. I agree. Which is why I think he fits the bill. He is the best politician of the group for VP. He's got the experience. He knows how to do the job. He's got the respect. We have to change the way that we look at our politicians. We have to change the way that we look at our presidents and the people who are vice president. We need people who are efficient and effective. That is critical. We have for too long, look at what Obama has done. Look at what Biden has done. Look at what Kamala Harris has done. Look at what they have been doing to America. Look at what Bill Clinton did. Look at the long-term as well as short-term effects of each of these individuals and how they have weakened America. We need people who have effective leadership at every level. They have to love America. They have to want to put America first, both on the short term and in the long term. That they have a vice president, that they have a staff that are effective, that have the same overall goal, not just to get a paycheck or to have ambition for the future of trying to run for president themselves. No, we need people who are there to make America better both now and in the future, and have an understanding of how to get that done, whether it's through political negotiation or international negotiation or pressure when that pressure is due. I think that's very important. Oh, what happened? I just lost everybody. Where'd it go? I think I just got dropped off of one. I think YouTube didn't like me. I think YouTube just kicked me. Could be wrong. Yeah, I think YouTube just hit the big censor button. I said something they don't like. That's funny. Out of nowhere, they just boom. At least that's what I'm seeing on my side is I haven't dropped any frames. It's not my transmission. It looks like Facebook, somebody in the White House didn't like what I was saying. I made too much sense talking about the 2024 election, trying to understand why we can't continue to have people like Joe Biden. And the longer we have people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the more you're going to see that the pro-Hamas movement, the pro-Democratic Socialists of America, the BLM, the Antifa, they're only going to grow. They're only going to get more power. They're only going to try and assume more elected offices, more leadership roles, and take America even further down the path we're going right now. That's going to only lead to more destruction of this nation. It's terrifying. It's truly and absolutely terrifying. Let me see. So let me try and check on something here. So far today, we've been talking about the rankings of the various Republicans, who's the best choice for vice president, who's got the most international experience. We've reviewed what I said and rankings that I had about the candidates from May 31st of 2023, when no one else thought to even consider their rankings, and we did. We've talked a little bit about what's happened at Cooper Union. We've talked about the anti-Semitism that is existing in our colleges and continuing to grow. And we've done several articles on this over the last week. We've gone over a little bit about what's happening with Iran and how that is having an impact in the United States. How the fact that Iran is using the open borders because of progressive ideology to threaten the United States and also to threaten Israel. And we've talked a little bit about what Israel is doing and the good and bad about that. Let me see. We've talked a little bit about Moscow. We've talked about Russia and their war. We've talked a little bit about China. Oh. I know what I forgot. You know what's really terrifying to me, folks? By the way, Cuomo's coming back. By the way, Democrats are bringing back Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo, who was accused initially of sexually assaulting 7 women. And then after a complete investigation by the Attorney General, Letitia James of New York, found 11 cases of sexual assault and then let him walk away. That it was Andrew Cuomo who, by his regulations, killed 16,000 Americans in nursing homes, and then, according to his political secretary, had meetings with Democrats and told them that he was covering up this investigation, that he was hiding this from the federal government, that he has caused the death of 16,000 people. That was all absolved. That was all okay because this evil person, Andrew Cuomo, just said, I give up, walked away, and gave his job to Kathy Hochul, someone who is not prepared and has no idea how to do the job. He just walked away and got to keep all the money, $16 million in donations. He got to keep the money, And he didn't get any charges put against him because he's a Democrat, a New York Democrat, because he has $16 million that he could donate to any campaign for Democrats and have them win in New York. Cuomo got to walk away scot-free. 11 cases of sexual assault found by the Attorney General. This is what the Attorney General of New York said. It's not rumor. It's not hearsay. She came out and said it directly that there were 11 cases. She said she would not prosecute it, but it wasn't a question of did it happen. She had the evidence. She said it did. And it's not the 7 that everyone thought happened. It was 11. They found more with the investigation, not less. And with all of that having happened, destroying New York's economy, having more people, there has never been a governor that has had more more New Yorkers leave the state than under Governor Andrew Cuomo. More people left under his time in office than at any time, although Kathy Hochul is trying her best to catch up, but none more than under Cuomo. And it wasn't because of, you take 2020 out of the picture, and it's still true that more people left New York State under Governor Andrew Cuomo than any other governor in New York State, not including 2020 at all. And he is now trying to come back to politics. He is suing to get his job back. He is suing and using your taxpayer dollars. He is using your money, not the $16 million he got in donations. He's using your taxpayer dollar to pay, to sue, to get his job back, even though he killed 16,000 people, tried to cover it up, and sexually abused 11 women, not 7. Did you know that? I know that right now YouTube doesn't want me to reach out to people. They don't want me to have this conversation. They got pissed off because I was talking about which woman would be a good choice for vice president on the Republican ticket. And I know they're upset about that I said, oh, well, it could be a woman or a black man. And that's obviously something you can't say about Republicans on YouTube. And so they've suppressed this. They really slammed this channel. They basically kicked everyone off. But I need to mention this, that Andrew Cuomo is trying to make a comeback. He thinks he can get reelected. Andrew Cuomo thinks that Democrats will support him, and I am terrified he might be right. That the Democratic Party may actually want to reelect Andrew Cuomo, even though he killed American citizens because of his orders, even though he violated Me Too and sexually abused women. I don't care if it was 1 or if it was all 11 or just the original 7. He's saying, oh, well, they're not all really. How many times do you, what? If it's 1 sexual abuse, according to Democrats, according to Me Too, I mean, they were willing to kick out, what's his name? Al, who's the Smalley guy? Freeman? It's with the F. Franken, that's it. Democrats kicked out Al Franken because of a picture one time. We're actually talking about 7 to somewhere between 7 and 11 confirmed cases of sexual assault, according to Letitia James, the AG of New York. So if someone wants to say, oh, Mike, you can't. Yes, I can. That's what the AG said. And now we have Andrew Cuomo, and he's saying, no, that doesn't matter. Would Democrats literally say, Me Too doesn't matter, the number of sexual assaults doesn't matter, the murder of 16,000 people and the cover-up of that, the corruption that has been surrounding, and we have seen nothing but corruption connected to the Cuomo campaign, none of that matters. Democrats will elect him again. That terrifies me. That is that is insane. It is insane. And according to Politico, we see that Cuomo is coming back, that he is on his way back. This is an article from October 27th in Politico. Millions of taxpayer money on lawsuits and a revenge campaign against plaintiffs. Cuomo's coming back swinging. He wants to get back into politics. He was also on Bill Maher as well, saying the same thing, that he wants to come back, that he wants to be involved, that Democrats should reelect him, that he should be forgiven for the murder of the elderly, for the murder of United States citizens, for the sexual abuses, for the corruption that he committed. Yeah, he should be you should forgive all that because he's a Democrat. And he has $16 million in donations. I don't think that's a reason why we should ever forgive him. And I think people should never forget what he has done, that he destroyed New York, even not counting 2020, even if you're not counting the sexual abuse, even if you don't count the people that he got killed. Just looking at his performance in New York State, he crushed the state. He led the nation in the number of people leaving New York, leaving a state to go anywhere but New York. He has destroyed our economy. He increased the debt of New York State consistently every single year. He has been miserable, and he wants to come back. And progressives will say, oh, I've heard the name, and I've heard Andrew Cuomo. I've heard Cuomo before. It's a popular name. We got to vote for him. It's terrifying me. It terrifies me, folks. It really does. But that's what we're looking at. The return of Andrew Cuomo, which means that Me Too doesn't exist. It doesn't count anymore. Might as well never mention it again. Corruption doesn't matter. You know, if you're in a blue state and you have a blue candidate, you can be as corrupt as you want to be. Corruption no longer matters. It's insulting. It's terrible. I don't understand this, folks. I really don't. Oh, and I did want to talk about the main shooter as well. Let me say this. Now, I said this on Friday in the live stream for the Liberty First Foundation, the Liberty First Foundation live stream. And I said very clearly, and I will say it again, the main shooter, the Lewistown shooter, was not about firearms. Red flag laws would not have protected anyone. The New York SAFE Act, all of the hundreds of gun control legislation that have been suggested and implemented by under the Biden administration, the Obama administration, in Chicago, New York, in California, none of it would have made a difference. Not once. And I think we need to make sure this is clear while it's still fresh in our memories, as people are reeling. And I know that there was a mass shooting in Chicago of 15 people this weekend. There's always a mass shooting of 15 people in Chicago every weekend. People are being shot every day in Chicago, which is part of the point. Gun control doesn't work. The promise always sounds fantastic. The promise is always sold as the solution, that they're going to fix it. And Democrats, this time, they have the law that the criminals, the gangs, the deranged are actually going to listen to. And the answer is they don't. No one's going to listen to it. They never have before. They never will going forward. It is all about trying to make you subservient and weak. And the main shooting, even if you had a red flag law, you didn't need red flag laws. As we have come to learn, the Maine police were aware that this guy had a mental issue. He was telling everyone, including the United States military, he is a reservist, he told the United States military, he told his commanding officers, He told them he is hearing voices in his head, and the voices were compelling him to cause harm. The United States government could have compelled him to have a mental health check. That's the military. They could have absolutely and should have absolutely done that. We've had the state police were aware of this. They could have stopped him. They could have caused him. His family could have temporarily committed him to have him go reviewed about his mental health status and to get help. You don't need a red flag law to do that. You don't need government intervention, new forms of government suppressing and repressing the public to be able to do that. This was never about what firearm he used. He could have used a car. He could have used a plane, a box cutter. He could have used a flamethrower, a bomb. It doesn't matter what the weapon was. And we have seen deranged and criminal individuals across the years in America. They have used cars. They have used planes. They have used box cutters. They have used handguns, shotguns, rifles. They have used bombs. We have seen it all. You're not stopping them by trying to whittle down the selection of weapon that they use. Oh, they'll use a handgun instead of a rifle, a shotgun instead of a handgun. They'll use a car, or they'll use a Molotov cocktail. They'll use a bomb, or they'll use their hands, a sword, a baseball bat, a brick, pushing people onto the subway tracks. It doesn't matter what the weapon was. We really need to get beyond this. We really need to think about the problem was the mental health issue that was not addressed. He did not get help. Because in America, Democrats are so busy trying to put all their money and all their time into removing your Second Amendment rights that they do not pay attention at all to the mental health issue that is consistently one of the leading problems of mass shootings. I'm not telling you that every mass shooting is because someone has a mental health issue. I'm not telling you that. I'm not saying that every person who has a mental health issue is going to become a mass shooter. I'm not saying that. But I am telling you that in an overwhelming preponderance of cases, the person who has done a mass shooting or has used a vehicle as a mass weapon of murder or have used bombs as a means of mass murderer, that each of these cases we tend to see either a religious connection to fanatical Islam and or mental health issues. Those are the two most common recurring themes that we see on a regular basis. They're either crazy people or they're fanatical religious zealots that tend to believe in Islam. Those are the two leading factors, whether you're talking about using a car, a bomb, a firearm, a sword, a brick, or pushing people onto the subway. Hey, Dal, you made it. Oh, it looks like they reconnected YouTube because it looked like YouTube was down for a while. Dal says, am I talking about Chris or Andrew Cuomo? I'm talking about Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo is coming back to politics. He is suing New York State. He is using taxpayer money to make more money for his donations to get his job back. He wants to be governor of New York again. And Chris Cuomo did join a minor news agency, but they're not credible according to YouTube, so you don't hear about them much. Dow goes on to say, the only ties to the Second Amendment for an argument in Maine could be attributed to is for the people to retain the exercise of their rights as the unorganized armed militia in order to protect themselves and their community. Well, we're hearing people now say Maine should have had a red flag law. They would have been protected with a red flag law. No, they aren't. If you look since 1999, looking at the creation of red flag laws in Connecticut and in the 18 states and the city of D.C., Washington, D.C. Red flag laws do not stop violent crime. They do not stop mass shootings. They do not stop suicides. There is one report that says, I am aware of one report out of all the reports that have been done about red flag laws. One report says that they might have some impact on suicides. Might. Some. Just a bit. Maybe. And in fact, that's it. There's only one report that says that, to my knowledge. Everything else, since 1999 to 2023, well over a decade, all of the, over 20 years, we have seen all of the data, all of the evidence points to the same thing. Red flag laws don't work. They don't prevent suicide. They don't protect people from mass shootings. We have seen consistently that one of the two leading factors of mass shootings tends to be a fanatical political ideology, usually based on religion, or you're going to see it's because someone has lost their mind. They have a mental issue. That's it. So Maine is not going to, they will promise you the sun. They will say, if you have a red flag law, they do the same thing that they said in 2018 in New York State. In New York State, they promised, Cuomo promised, if we have the red flag laws and we have the New York SAFE Act, which in 2013 he promised, if we have the New York SAFE Act, you're going to be safe. Gun control is going to protect you from all kinds of gun crime. That was a lie. Factually, documented, year after year, lie. Did not help make people safe. Then came 2018, said red flag laws, they're going to make you safe. They're going to protect you. Well, that's exactly the same thing you said in 2013 about having the New York SAFE Act. It didn't work. In between those two, you had Obama pass 32 executive orders to end gun violence. That didn't work. That was in 2016. So 2013, they gave us a promise, it failed. 2016, Obama gave us executive orders, they failed. In 2018, we again got New York State and Andrew Cuomo promised us absolute safety and protection from mass shootings with the red flag laws. It failed. To this day, we have almost the exact same, if not higher levels of mass shootings going on right now. That's not a difference. They lied to you. I'm sorry to tell the American people this. If you did not realize it, they lied to you. They used you to get a political partisan agenda passed. They just don't want you to have a gun. They want you to be defenseless. They want you to beg them to protect them, to do something, which allows them to do anything. They can pass anything as long as they say, I'm doing something. By the way, give me all your money. Stay locked in your own house. You have no rights, no freedoms. You're a prisoner. Obey. That's doing something. Now, does any of that mean that they did something that will make you safe? No, but they did something. Is it efficient or effective? No, but they didn't promise you to be efficient or effective. They just promised to do something. Because we've gotten used to asking the wrong question. We didn't ask them, be effective. We didn't ask them, be efficient. We didn't say, you must make us safe or to deal with mental health issue. No, we didn't, or protect us from these fanatical religious fanatics. We didn't say that. We said, do something. And they did something, all right. They increased the amount of corruption in the United States. They decreased the number of women who were able to protect themselves in the United States. They did not hinder a single criminal or any of the mentally deranged. That's the honest truth. That is the truth. Not my truth, not your truth. That is the empirical, factual, documented truth. And you look at any of the data, actual data that is exactly what you will see. Dow says that the SAFE Act is unconstitutional as well as being a BS population control measure. Yeah, it is. It is horrendous. It is horrendous. And the people of Maine, I know it is a time of high emotion. That's when they come for you. That's when they try and pass these things. You notice they weren't talking about passing red flag laws in Maine when everyone was calm and no one was worried about anything. No, they wouldn't do that then. They didn't do it in New York. They didn't try and pass the New York SAFE Act when everyone was calm and no one was worried and we were talking about funding illegal aliens. No, they didn't want to talk about red flag laws then. They didn't want to talk about gun control then. They only do it when you are panicked, when you are terrified, when you are afraid, when you don't know what to do. That's when they say, I will do something. Red flag law. Let's pass that. Will it make me safe? Let's pass red flag law. Let's do that. Will it protect me? Let's pass red flag law. Aren't you afraid? Someone could shoot you tomorrow. Yes, do something then. Go ahead. Will it make me safe? Oh, now that we've passed it, no. Only after they pass these things do they start saying, oh, but the data shows it doesn't actually do anything. We thought it might do something. It's just not doing anything that you wanted. You wanted safety? Doesn't do that. You wanted protection? Doesn't do that. But it does take away your rights. It does allow the government to spend money for all of their cronies. But it doesn't help you at all. So they did something, just nothing that you would actually want. And you're not supposed to talk about it because it's not an approved message coming from the White House, and the mainstream news media doesn't want anyone to think about that. They're supposed to obey. They're supposed to say, I'm afraid, protect me, do something. And the politicians say, okay, I'll do something. And that's it. That's the conversation. You're not supposed to think about it for another second after that. But you really must. You really must. Just like you need to think about when we have open borders, that means more terrorism. That means more Americans being killed. And I guarantee you, the terrorists that may be coming to America from Iran that want to kill you, whether you're a progressive or not, in fact, because you're a progressive, because you want women to read, because you want them to drive a car, because you believe in the LGBT as an existence, that they exist at all, the fanatics out of Iran will kill you first. And they will use firearms and bombs and anything else to do it because they don't care. And no red flag, gun safe zones aren't going to protect you. Red flag laws aren't going to protect you. The New York State Act is not going to protect you. None of the crap is going to protect you. Bulletproof vest might protect you, except in New York State, if you have a bulletproof vest like I do, you're a criminal. The things that actually will protect you, like having a firearm, having a concealed carry permit, having body armor, yeah, the things that could actually protect you, yeah, that makes you a criminal. That's how backwards these people are. Just doesn't make sense to me, folks. Just doesn't make sense to me. And for the people in Maine, look, some of the people in Maine are not going to agree with me because they are out of their minds right now. I don't say that as a negative. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not saying they're crazy. But I understand. You're afraid. You're afraid for your family. You're afraid for your friends. You're not sure if you can trust the government or anyone else. You're not sure what to do. I understand that. And that makes you vulnerable. Politically vulnerable. That makes you monetarily vulnerable. That means people are going to prey on you. And don't think that politicians are above using this confusion, this fear against you. They will do it in a heartbeat. They have been doing it since 1999. This is a means for people to get reelected, to get donations, and to pass laws that will steal your rights and give you nothing in return. You will not be safer. You will not get anything. But you will. It will cost you money. It will cost you your rights. It will cost you freedom. Absolutely. It's going to cost you. You're not going to get anything for that, but the politicians will. Their crony donors will. But you, the American citizen, you won't get a damn thing. So I'm telling you, if you are in Maine, as well as any of the other states that have not passed a red flag law, I advise you very strongly, stop and think about this. Look at the data. No matter what you emotionally feel, no matter how afraid you may be right now, no matter how dedicated you may be to your political ideology, stop and actually look at the data, which I've been doing since 1999. Which has been happening, and every single professor that has done the data, every institution, including the FBI, when you look at the data, gun control does not make you safe. It doesn't work. It has never worked. Because if it did, they wouldn't keep telling you that they need a new law, that they need even more gun control. There's always another gun control law. There's always more restrictions, more denial of your freedoms that they keep implementing. Just ask Representative Sheila Jackson Lee and all of the bills she wants to put out there, like H.R. 127 that she tried to pass a couple of years ago. There's always more restrictions. There's always more they want to take away from you. But quite honestly, if any of their policies worked, and it's always the same policy, it's the same idea every single time. Gun control, gun control. What does that mean? Every time, oh, you don't get a gun. We want to take away your guns. We want to take away your bullets. We want to restrict your ability to buy guns, buy bullets, to protect yourself. Every single time, it's the same thing. Every single piece of gun control in the last 50 years has always been the same argument. Take away a gun, take away the bullets, take away your right to be able to protect yourself. Every single time. And not once has it worked. There is no example of where it worked. That's why they keep making new laws. And I advise you in Maine, you don't have to agree with me right this second. Wait until your emotions calm down. Wait until you're not running scared and afraid. Slow down and think. And look at the data. And then consider places like Chicago, New York, St. Louis, L.A., San Francisco, Baltimore, Detroit. They have every single piece of gun control legislation ever thought up by decades of Democrats. Decades now. And it still hasn't stopped any of those places in gun crime, mass shootings, violence. It hasn't stopped anything. Has not ever stopped anything. And they have all of the laws, all of them. And it doesn't work. So why do you want to do it? Why do you want to adopt laws and legislation that doesn't work? It didn't work in Chicago. It didn't work in New York City. It hasn't worked in Austin or Colorado or anywhere. There's nowhere that it has worked. Why do you want to do it in Maine? Why do you want to adopt a law that has failed everywhere they have done it? Does that make sense to anyone? Why do you want to adopt a law that has failed in every single place they used it? Doesn't make sense. Dow says, the best advice I ever received: practice being situationally aware, head on a swivel, be armed, trained, and be your own first responder. I agree with every single word of that. I agree with every single word of that, especially for women. And I will say it again. You want to have a law that's going to help women, that's going to help Americans be safe? Every single woman graduating high school must be proficient at using a handgun. That doesn't mean they have to own a handgun. Doesn't mean we're forcing women to buy handguns. Every woman must be trained how to use a firearm, and they must be proficient with it. Every woman in America. Pass that law. Then let's see what happens. Because everything else you've passed doesn't work. Let's help let's help those who have mental issues, and let's make sure every single woman who goes to high school cannot graduate until she becomes proficient with being able to use a firearm. All of them. And I guarantee you, you do those two things, you will change the amount of crime in America. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Let me see if there was something else I wanted. Was there something? So I know I wanted to talk about the main shooter, but again, the main shooter has nothing to do with firearms, has nothing to do with gun control. It was completely and singularly about mental health. And the government at every single level, federal, state, local, they all failed him. They all failed. He told people what was the problem. And I especially point to the military. He was a reservist. He's hearing voices. And they didn't mandate that he needs to have a mental health check. They could have ordered him. You joined the military. You don't have individual rights. You are subordinate to your higher command. That's what it is to be in the military. He didn't have a choice. You could have commanded him, mandated that he goes and gets a mental health check. It would have been real simple. And the federal government failed him miserably. Oh. So I talked about Bill Maher. I talked about Maine. I do want to, so I was talking about Maine, but I also wanted to talk about Tennessee. And I wanted to give a warning to the people of Tennessee. In particular, and to be very specific about this, because this is referring to, there's an article by the Tennessee Lookout that covers this, and this is from October 25th. It's an issue that's going on in courtrooms right now in Tennessee. So let me mention, and I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second, Dal. If you are in Tennessee, if you happen to have sex with sex workers, prostitutes, if you have sex with women or men for money, which would be prostitution, which is a crime, and the left likes to call them sex workers. Their legal term is prostitute. If you are having sex with them, you absolutely, positively must be wearing a condom. Please do it. Because right now, the ACLU is fighting to allow these sex workers to not notify you that they have AIDS. This is the thing. The ACLU is going to court right now so that prostitutes do not need to notify their communities or their, quote, clients that they have AIDS, that they can hide the AIDS from everyone. Does that sound safe to you? Now, to be fair, Tennessee is the only state that has a law that says if you are a sex worker and you have AIDS, then you are classified as a danger and you have to register. And you have to register as a danger to the public because you have AIDS. This is a law that comes from 1991. And that was during the height of the AIDS crisis. They never changed the law because they never change laws. Laws never go off the books. So the law says that if you are arrested for being a prostitute or as the left would call it, a sex worker. What is a sex worker? A prostitute. So if you're a prostitute and you get AIDS, you have to be registered. From that point on, you have to get registered as having AIDS and being a prostitute, and that will follow you as part of your record forever to protect the public. But the ACLU is saying, well, that's unfair because now everybody knows that you are a prostitute and you have AIDS. And I don't see the problem there. I don't see that as being, yes, there is a higher level of concern and safety for the public. No one's saying you can't work, although you really shouldn't be working as a prostitute. That's illegal. It's a crime. But you can get a job. You can go and live in a house. You can pay your bills. You can see your family. That's all on you. The argument that comes from the ACLU is saying, well, you can't see your family anymore because you have HIV. And so you're not able to see your family. That's a decision amongst your family and their concern on transmissibility. That's on them. There is no one in the law that says you can't go and visit your family members, whether you have AIDS or cancer or anything else. Unless, of course, that's outside of the mandate. Other than when, the pandemic locked down the nation. Then you couldn't help. But that's another thing. But if you have AIDS, you can go and visit any and all of your family members if they are willing to visit you or to see you or to allow you in. So that's the thing that's getting it to me. Their problem is that 77% of the prostitutes with AIDS in Tennessee are black. 77%. And so they say this is racial as well as it is unconstitutional. I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. But I find it troubling that they are fighting to allow repeat prostitute. This isn't one time. Individuals who have been repeatedly arrested for prostitution and having AIDS, not because AIDS is a crime. It's not. But you have the condition of having AIDS, and you repeatedly commit the crime of prostitution. And rather than letting anyone and everyone around know this could be a concern, they want to hide it. They want to hide it from the prostitutes' clients. They want to hide it from the community. What if what if your blood transfers? I mean, blood transmission is a means of transferring AIDS. The blood transfusion. It's rare for you to get a cut and transmit AIDS. It is rare, but it is possible. It does happen. And I would think that, even if someone is paying for prostitution, they still deserve the right to know that doing so could kill them. At least give them the option to know whether or not they want to risk contracting AIDS. I don't think that's an unfair thing. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm the strange person because if you have AIDS and you're doing prostitution, I think people should know about that because you're putting a risk into the community. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Let me see. Dow said, the irony, going back talking about the Second Amendment, Dow says the irony is if a person is proficient in firearm use, it removes the fear and promotes firearm ownership, which is true. Well, that's not ironic. It's true. People are only afraid because they don't know. The people who have never touched a firearm think it's all about whatever they see in the movies. They have no idea what the reality is. They only have the fear as told to them and as expressed by a movie. And therefore, that's why they're so wrong. And that's why everything they do is ineffectual, because they have no idea what they're actually talking about. Dow goes on to say, so women especially would increase in firearm ownership and crime would be reduced, falling under my idea that every woman must, to graduate high school, must be proficient in using a firearm. That they have to understand the use of and how to fire a firearm. I think that's incredibly important, and he agrees, it seems. And the same is extrapolated throughout the minorities and others. Then the focus could be placed on where it belongs, mental illness and criminals. Well, yes. Again, if I'm saying all women in every high school has to be proficient with using a firearm, well, that would cover black women, white women, Asian women, Hispanic women, every minority group, every religious group, everyone is going to be covered. And if you have, and women are 51% of the population. So I'm hitting the majority of the population, and I'm hitting every demographic within, in terms of race and in terms of race and sexuality and sexual preference, all that stuff. So I think it would have a dramatic impact on the amount of violence. I truly do. And, in the same vein of trying to have the greatest impact possible, I think Tennessee wasn't wrong in saying that if you have AIDS and you are a prostitute, notice it's not one or the other. They're not asking people to get registered publicly as a danger because you're a prostitute or because you have AIDS. It is only the combination of the two. If you are a prostitute and you have AIDS, then you get further restrictions. And then you have to be registered as a danger to the public. It's not because you just being a prostitute or just having AIDS isn't the problem. So I think that's important to understand, because I think most people conflate this when you hear the ACLU, when you hear people trying to defend this and saying, well, no, see, they're being so unfair because these are black prostitutes. No one cares about the color. No one said the law applies to black, white, or otherwise. So who cares what their color of skin is? Oh, it's because they're trans. No one said about their sexuality. The law applies whether the sex is gay or straight or whatever other ramification you could imagine in your mind. I don't care. I don't know what other permutations there are, but whatever permutation you come up with, it applies. Are you selling sex? Are you purchasing sex? Yes, that is a crime. That's prostitution. Done. Doesn't matter whether you're trans or not, whether you're gay or not, whether you're straight or not. It's prostitution or not. And if it's prostitution, and that prostitution is coupled with AIDS, then you have a problem. But if you just have prostitution or you just have AIDS, that's not the same restriction. You don't get the same restrictions. I don't see a problem with this. See, this is again that left-wing mentality. They don't think through. And they conflate things and they try and make it emotional. And, oh, you must hate gay people. Why? I didn't say anything about gay people. Oh, you must hate women. Why? I didn't say anything about women. Oh, you just hate people who have AIDS. No, I'm talking about a specific class of people who happen to have AIDS. A very specific category, a very specific niche. I didn't say everyone who has AIDS. Or I didn't even say everyone who's a prostitute. I'm talking about a very specific group of people. And I think Tennessee had the right idea. Graham says, hey, Graham, still driving? Graham says, good live stream today. He's got to sign off. I guess he's still driving. Oh, I'm making the long drive go by faster. Good. I'm glad that we could do that for you, Graham. And so, I don't know, maybe people think I'm wrong here. I don't think I am wrong here. I don't think this is a crazy idea. But right now, the ACLU wants to make sure that your prostitutes can have AIDS and not tell you about it. By the way, how does that make things safer? How does that make the community safer? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there. I don't know. It threw me off. It doesn't make sense to me. It makes me very concerned. And it should make you concerned. Now, I am not condoning prostitution. I am not condoning random sex that could contract AIDS or illegal drug use that could pass on AIDS. I don't condone that either. I don't think prostitution's a good thing. I'm against it. That's me. You can have whatever particular viewpoints you have, but I think Tennessee's law has been effective since 1991, and regardless of the argument about, well, it's only affecting people of this religion, of this race, of this sexual preference, I don't care, because that's not what the law is designed for. That's just circumstance. That's just happenstance. That's not what the law says. It's not who they target. So it shouldn't matter. But imagine this. If they're willing to do that in Tennessee, what are they going to do in New York State or California or Illinois or in Maryland? What are they going to do in Oregon? What about the bluer than blue, the progressive states? If Tennessee, which is considered a right-leaning state, if the ACLU can convince the courts in Tennessee and say, no, it's wrong, it's a hardship, you are denying people their rights because they have AIDS and are active prostitutes. I don't know. Imagine what New York's going to do with that law. Imagine what California would do with that law. Imagine how the progressives, the Democratic Socialists of America, how they will twist this law, and imagine how it's going to affect you and your health going forward. It's kind of scary. It's not even kind of scary. It is scary. All right, folks. So we've been on for about, 3.5 hours. Wow, we've been on for a little while, haven't we? It's a rainy day here in New York, in the Bronx, and it sucks. But I did want to share, I know it's Halloween, and I know a lot of people want to go out for Halloween. And if you are, be safe, be careful, because the weather sucks out there. I'm going to try and bring up an image. What is that? User has been banned says, I truly hope that in Tennessee, no matter where people stand, whether you agree with the ACLU or whether you agree with the state, I do not condone, and I hope no one is taking it as condoning violence against prostitutes, against hookers. I hope no one takes it as being condoning violence against someone with AIDS. Again, I don't care what race they are. I don't care what gender they are. I don't care what their sexual preference is. That's all meaningless to me. We're not saying that there should be violence against these individuals. But I do believe that if you are actively committing prostitution, if you're a hooker and you have AIDS, yeah, the community you're in should know about it. But that doesn't equal violence. And I know someone on the left will try and make it say, oh, well, then you're supporting violence. No, one has nothing to do with the other whatsoever. One has nothing to do with the other. No matter how much the left would like to make that argument so that they can then hide the failure of their idea that, oh, no, it's perfectly fine to, be going around in a community, committing prostitution, being a hooker, and having AIDS, and potentially spreading that AIDS around. Yeah, that's good for a community. That's how you build the community up. Good going, ACLU. It just makes no sense to me, folks. It really does. I don't understand how people come up with these ideas sometimes. The ACLU. I don't understand what's going through their brains sometimes. Okay, so hang on one second. Come on, you stupid. There it is. Waiting for something to load up right now. It's kind of Halloweenish. Or at least it's supposed to be. I have like the worst computer these days. Stop. There we go. So, we got a new little image here. If my computer will ever run. Because it doesn't seem like it wants to. There we go. So let me see if I can get this over here. Come on. My computer wants to crash. It just wants to crash. It really, really does. Okay. So let me play this for everybody here. Let me hide myself for a quick second. There we go. And you should be able to hear this. Oh, no, you won't be able to hear it. Hang on. Oops, wait a minute. It's not working because you guys can't hear it. You can't hear it. I will fix that. I will fix that. I will fix that 1 second. I'm fixing it so that you guys can hear it. There we go. Now it'll work. I'm happy to be here with you today. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has no idea what she's talking about.
You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
All right, so, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, our number of our Patreons is increasing. That's good news. So, always got to be happy about that. And I do want to thank people, because we didn't mention earlier, if you have found the last 3.5 hours to be entertaining, interesting, educational, if it maintained your interest in part or in whole for any of the last 3.5 hours, please like, share, and subscribe. It's that simple. Just like, share, and subscribe. We really don't ask. Where is it? My computer froze again. Come on. Don't freeze. There we go. But that's really all we ask for, is to like, share, and subscribe. If you can, donate. Would appreciate it. It helps. But if you can't, that's okay as well. Because you matter, folks. And it's hard enough to do this every week. But I can tell you what. It's better. I guarantee you, we were better than watching Ahsoka. That's for sure. We were more entertaining and more interesting than watching Ahsoka. I guarantee you. Matter of fact, I'm going to type that out. As if I can figure out how to type again. Yep. Trust me, folks, this was more interesting, more involved, and better time than the entire Ahsoka series. 3.5 hours. We're literally like 10 minutes away from the entire time frame of the Ahsoka series, and you'll have more time, more fun watching one live stream with us than watching that entire series. So, with that said, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of the audience. You guys make it worthwhile. You make it interesting. I enjoy having these conversations with you. I look forward to each and every one of the comments. Hang on one second. Stop. That's the puppy there. Each and every one of you make this worthwhile, and I thank you. I look forward to seeing each and every one of your comments, whether it was live or after the show. Live or after the show, I'm looking forward to seeing your comments on all the issues. And I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you, everyone.